You by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Wants it all, man-to-man coverage. Douglas is there and hauls it in. Touchdown, FSU.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Big 12 opener comes down to this play. Sanders gets the feet set toward the end zone for the game. And it's caught by Wester, just like 1994.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. 365 Sports and another week and a busy day and news recently. In fact, in the last hour, involving what was supposed to be an expanded Pac-12, and we'll have that in a moment. Good afternoon. Craig Smoak and I back from Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, Nebraska. Despite the loss, it was a memorable experience. We'll share some of those pictures and moments with you. It was fantastic. Paul has FSU in Dallas against SMU coming up this weekend. A lot of news to get to. Here is the first bit of news. These were schools that the Pac-12 were in discussions with, and it looked like this was going to happen, that the Pac-12 was going to end up with schools that now Ross Dellinger saying that they have recommitted to being a part of the American Athletic Conference and will not be leaving for the Pac-12.
That is that's a blow to the new Pac-12, because I started to wonder after reading some things this week when they said new Pac-12 or stay where you are, what was the benefit to all of that? And I don't know if the new Pac-12 is a benefit. If it's just going to be another G5 league, why not stay in the G5 league that you're in, that you're comfortable with? So I don't know where they're going to go now, because now the AAC has said no. We're going to get to some Mountain West news in a second. Their options to get to 8 are not as good as they were a week ago.
Yeah, and let's mention those teams. Memphis, South Florida,
I thought it was
UTSA, and Tulane. Those are the 4 teams, Memphis, USF, UTSA, and Tulane, that have committed to the American Athletic Conference today in a group statement on the Twitter page of the AAC, and saying they're prioritizing student-athlete welfare. They're proud academic institutions. I mean, the typical kind of rah-rah stuff, but they say, while we acknowledge receiving interest in our institutions from other conferences, we firmly believe that it is in our individual and collective best interest to uphold our commitment to each other. Together, we will continue to modernize the conference, elevate the student-athlete experience, achieve championship-winning success, and build the future. So that was part of the text from the AAC. So Memphis, all of that talk and all of that hope for a fan base that has been teased by the Big 12 on a couple of occasions, thought maybe there'd be an opening with some of these other realignment moves. Memphis staying put, that's significant. That's a big brand that's been out there, and you look at like who's kind of teetering on the G5 making a jump. It would be Memphis right near the top of the list. Same thing with USF, who's been involved in these conversations. Tulane's been involved in plenty of these conversations. I mean, they've been connected to the Big 12. They've been connected to the Pac-12. And now here they are, and they're going to stay put as well. And then, more of the new booty is UTSA. And we saw some comments from Jeff Traylor the other day that, indicated there had been discussions, but that they had to get the money right, and that there was some questions unanswered that they had to figure out. And so I guess they got the answers to those questions, and the answers weren't good enough to make yet another move for UTSA, which had just joined the Americans. So that is just a blip of the news and what has been a pretty busy day in realignment, but it is a significant piece of news, because you would have thought that if not all 4, some combination of these schools were very likely headed to go be a part of that new pack, add to that TV package they're trying to build up. In some cases, in the eyes of their fans, maybe take a step up towards being in a better position. But instead, that is huge news that they are going to go stay put, and those 4 are going to stay together, and their fan reactions have been all over the place.
Well, and this is going to be, in some ways, a little bit more money for the schools that decide they're going to stay in the American Athletic Conference. Tim Pernitti, of course, the commissioner, is exploring private equity, new distribution models, expansion, and more. So that is great news for the American Athletic Conference. Also today, the Mountain West Conference. Gloria Nevarez, of course, has been doing her business as they look like they were going to lose teams, and they are. but also there was thoughts that Air Force would be leaving for the Pac-12, and the Air Force is now committed to remaining as a part of the Mountain West Conference. Their superintendent, otherwise the AD, released a statement, and they are going nowhere. Meanwhile, there is the story today about Gonzaga. They have been out there. Of course, the Big 12 has looked at possible basketball schools. UConn's always been in play, but Gonzaga will be, in fact, adding themselves to the Pac-12.
According to one report,
according to Ron,
as we were talking about before the show.
I think you may have missed that part. Craig was saying John Rothstein has now conflicted that and said that that's not true.
Well,
so Brett McMurphy has one thing, John Rothstein has another. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, Brett McMurphy's saying that Gonzaga's agreed to join the Pac-12. And we love Brett, and Brett's been spot on a lot of the realignment news, so we'll see who's right in the end. But he did have that out there just a little while ago that Gonzaga was going to be joining the conference and leaving the West Coast Conference. Pac-12 still needs minimum, but Gonzaga, even without a football team, will receive a full conference revenue share in the Pac-12. So he's not just saying like, hey, he's like giving details. Like they're going and they're going to receive a full conference share even without a football team. But then very shortly after, John Rothstein, who's pretty plugged in obviously on the basketball side of things, said, without mentioning Brett in particular, contrary to reports, Gonzaga currently has no deal in place to leave the West Coast Conference for the Pac-12. So that remains to be seen on who will ultimately be right there. But you had some celebration on the Pac side of things because, hey, the Gonzaga basketball brand makes a lot of sense to add to what they're trying to put together and make it more attractive. And the location makes a lot of sense. So why not? But it looks like that is on hold for right now, or at least is not as finalized as Brett McMurphy has heard, or maybe John Rothstein's not hearing right. We'll see in the end, but there's obviously some interest in adding Gonzaga.
Two guys that do a great job at what they do, so that'll be interesting.
And a source off here, so we'll see what happens there. But Gonzaga is going to continue to be in the news, and wherever they land will be of interest, of course, to a large portion of our audience that are Big 12 fans because there's been so much talk about that.
Yeah, no, Gonzaga and UConn, again, because of the Brett Yormark scratch itch, the itch that he has when it comes to men's basketball. Now, we will get to what UCF has this weekend, what Utah, BYU, and Colorado did, what Tech, West Virginia, Cincinnati did. We'll have our pod at about 4 o'clock today. And then also, oh boy, K-State, Kansas, Baylor, TCU, Oklahoma State, Houston, in different ways, a rough weekend. We'll have all of that here in just a moment. But college football this weekend, we have ourselves some bangers. There have been a few, and then it kind of dipped off a little bit. Number 2, Georgia. At number 4, Alabama. In fact, Graham Coffey covers Georgia, will join us on the show later today. Illinois, coming off fresh off the win in Lincoln in overtime, will play at number 9, Penn State. Louisville, unbeaten with Jeff Braun, will play at Notre Dame. And then in the Big 12, despite both teams losing, still a top 25 matchup between Oklahoma State and Kansas State. The two teams that they got bloodied over the weekend in different ways.
Yeah, they're actually, I could have picked the tiebreaker for Pick'em to be Georgia and Alabama, but that math is probably too high. I just don't want to do that. I picked that one because I think it's probably a little more difficult to figure out how that game's going to go. Oklahoma State all of a sudden can't run the ball. Now, granted, Utah has a really good defense, but that's not the first time that Ollie Gordon hasn't been a factor in a game.
It's been the whole year, dude.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
The entire
so
season.
it's not the first time that's happened. And then Kansas State, I just think they have some growing up and maturing to do because they got caught flat-footed early in that game and never regained their balance. And BYU's got something cooking in that they just don't care what everybody says about them on the outside, and they live in the moment. So
they had more than just offensive points put up as they toyed with K-State, and a lot of like grumbling out of Manhattan. I saw even some that, man, they do have one of these every year. We'll get into that. By the way, Greg Wrubell, voice of BYU, will join us today at 4:25 as they're coming off that win and playing in Waco coming up this weekend. Garrett, let's bypass the top 25 and get to now the games in the conference, including looking ahead and backwards. We'll have our pod again at 4 where we dissect it a little bit more. But how about UCF hosting Big Noon Kickoff on Saturday before they play Colorado, coming off the Hail Mary with no time left. More on that in a second, too, as the Buffaloes with a huge win at home in a game where really Baylor kind of dictated most of the tempo until they could have put the game away with a field goal. They didn't do it. So UCF will host will host Big Noon Kickoff as Fox is going to Orlando for the game between the Knights and also Buffaloes.
Yeah, that's a great spotlight for those programs, and it's the least that Fox could do after that BS over the weekend of having Big Noon Kickoff at Ohio State Marshall, because who gives a crap other than Ohio State fans? I mean, seriously, that game was never competitive, and that, in the light of having Utah and Oklahoma State dangling right there, really makes you question of just what type of priority the Big 12 is for Fox if they're choosing Ohio State Marshall over a top 25 matchup. So I'm glad that they alleviated my fears a little bit on how this whole Fox partnership was going to go moving forward, because they are going to go shine a spotlight on a pretty big game in the Big 12, and that's good. That's good, because I was really wondering about that, sitting in an airport seeing Ohio State just kick Marshall over and over and over again with very little pushback. So I think that's deserved. I think that it's going to be an excellent matchup, and I think this was an incredible weekend for the Big 12. Definitely a lot of ugly coming out of this for some teams, a lot of great coming out of this for other teams, and as much chaos as we had talked about for the last year in terms of what we expected from this conference when it came to football and basketball. I'm assuming we're going to see a lot of the chaos carry over into that as well, but in football, we thought this 16-team league with everybody pretty even would be pretty even and could result in everybody beating up on each other. And through the first couple of weeks of conference play getting underway, that's kind of what it looks like, although if there is one team who's not feeling like that will be the case, it's Utah, because they took a backup quarterback to Stillwater, a.k.a. one of the toughest places to play, and made it look pretty easy, beating Oklahoma State. You're seeing Alan Bowman get benched during that game only to come back and try to rally them. I think you felt a little bit better by the end of it, I guess, a little bit more positive about maybe moving forward if you're Oklahoma State towards the end than you did certainly in the beginning, in the middle of that game. But who's going to jump up and beat Utah? I mean, I think they're the one true playoff contender right now in this league. Of course, whoever wins the league is going to be a contender is going to be in the playoff. But as far as the possibility of getting two teams in, like Utah's the only one that's got to feel good about where they are. Everybody else is going to be skating on thin ice because they're already all sitting there with a loss or two. So it's going to be very interesting because we're just getting started here.
BYU sit there going, hey, we might have a double
BYU as well,
And UCF hasn't lost yet either.
And they host Colorado, Yeah,
I mean, that's a yet thing, and we don't know. And look, yet for Utah is probably coming as well.
That was supposed to be a test for Utah is my point. No, exactly. And they won in Stillwater with a backup quarterback. So it's like, who's going to beat them?
Yeah, A+ on the test.
Physically beat them up.
Yeah, A+ on the test,
42 minutes of time of possession. Paul, go ahead. 249 yards rushing to 48. Bowman could not complete passes. As you said, he was benched. That's a flex from Utah, no question.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, I reached out to a Gonzaga source of mine to help sift through.
Oh, yeah, him.
Yeah. I did reach out to a Gonzaga source of mine. Now, he doesn't work there anymore, but he works down the street.
He does, yeah.
He works down the street. So I asked him. He says he thinks right now at this moment both McMurphy and Rothstein are right in that McMurphy says leaving, not left, and Rothstein says no deal is in place or whatever.
Could be both, yeah.
He says, so he's just saying nothing has been signed or a formal announcement. The AP has it the best, saying that they are in talks.
Okay, well, that's part of it.
That looks like it's going to be inevitable, and that's good that they're probably they're coming from different places. And I would add one more thing on the expansion talk that we rolled over, but Dellinger also reporting that Air Force has committed to the Mountain West.
We had that, yeah. Glad you. No. We had it. We just didn't get to it. But I'm glad
that
you
was also
that.
notable because that's another team that's been talked about in the possibility of moving around, and so the Air Force Academy have committed to remaining in the Mountain West and will soon sign a new grant of rights deal with financial incentives. So it's been a really interesting day from a realignment and especially a Pac-12 perspective.
I got to think the Pac-12, even though they had their moment last week and it looked like they were going to be in another surge, that's got to be kind of a disappointing thing that they aren't adding those schools that were Memphis, Tulane, USF, and who knows what still might happen with UTSA or many others, or any others, but Air Force also now committing to stay in the Mountain West. Now, I have these categories. We can touch on this a little bit and then get into the Colorado finish against Baylor and K-State's disaster as BYU just pummeled them, and the 5-layer burrito bet. What is it about fans putting these things up on social media like the Florida State fan did 2 or 3 weeks ago?
What it is just, hey, look at me. I'm not going to actually do this, but, hey, I'll get my 5 minutes of fame.
Well, now, this guy says he's doing it.
I'll believe it when I see it.
He says he's doing
I don't
it.
want to see it.
Well, inform the people who don't even know what we're talking about here.
Go ahead, Garrett, to the one that says 5-layer burrito bet, if you wouldn't mind. So a Kansas State fan, this is what he said prior to the game about K-State and BYU.
I think it's further down the list.
If K-State loses to BYU, I'll shove a beefy 5-layer burrito up my blank. And they lost 38-9 or whatever the score was.
Sounds like you just wanted to have a reason to do that, actually.
No, the better part of this was BYU football's account responding to the tweet with "Live Moss," the Taco Bell slogan.
Yes.
And that is just a classic clapback there, BYU. And apparently, St. Bill Snyder, this is the user on Twitter who posted this, posted a video today saying he's going to do it.
9:30 or so on Saturday night or something like that.
I mean, that's great and all, but I don't know about you guys. I'm going to not watch that, and I have no interest in that. And, again, like, of all the things you could say, like, Paul's like, what bet should I do? I'll do a keg stand. And I'm sitting here doing, hey, we get to 100,000 subs. I'll take my hat off for the first time on this show and do a whole show without it. And this guy's – I'll take Taco Bell food and shove it up my where does your brain go? Because my brain doesn't go there. But if you're going to follow through on it, I mean, kudos, I guess, for sticking to your word. But yeah, I don't know anything else you could have thrown out there into the universe. And this is on the heels of the Oklahoma fan who, what was that promise? He promised I don't even remember what it was, but he disappeared. His Twitter account got
Florida
deleted.
State fan.
Or no, it's Florida State fan,
Yeah.
I was thinking of two alien. I was thinking
with dog crap out of a red Solo cup.
Yeah, and he's disappeared. By the way, everyone in the chat, Craig Holy, my God, Fred, funny Craig, only 5 layers, and then, as Craig said, just needed a reason to do it.
No, so this is probably
I'll shave
something
my head.
Yeah.
I'll do a keg stand. No, I'll do this.
Here's the deal. This is probably something he wanted to do and needed a reason. That's a good explanation. I don't want to watch it. I mean, my mind's gone wild with the physics of it because a BB 5-layer burrito is not like a solid thing. I mean, it's kind of squishy.
It's a large. No, he's putting it in the freezer.
Oh, I mean,
he's going to freeze it
again.
I don't know.
Look,
all right, let's get away from that. But I'm glad
I'm not
we
here to
brought it
govern
up.
your bedroom, pal.
So, all right, Utah flexed, BYU flexed, Colorado found a way. Here is a tweet from one of our weekly guests and CBS and ESPN analyst, Taylor McCarg. That is 1,000% on the coaching for Baylor. Rush 5 press coverage on a Hail Mary, unbelievably bad by the staff. And Taylor sent us a text during that moment. So Dave Aranda explained at the end of the game, he called it, by the way, the victory cigar coverage, that the right defensive end was not supposed to crash, that he was supposed to maintain the edge. He didn't. Shedeur got outside. Just before he's hit, he throws a BB. Great catch in the end zone right there. Great comeback by Colorado because Baylor seemed to have that game, as I said earlier, not in control, but they always kind of had that thing where they needed it to be. And then the fumble by Dominic Richardson at overtime after Colorado scored pretty quickly. That is I asked this question. Is this among the UNLV-type losses for Baylor in their history, or is that going too far?
No, because that one was just pure hubris. This was a bad call, but it wasn't a hubris, I don't think. I don't think it was that. It was a really bad defensive call. It was really poor execution.
Was it a bad defensive call? That's what Taylor's saying, but if you hear Aranda, if you don't let where Shedeur rolls to his left collapse, then maybe he doesn't get such a free shot.
I don't think Aranda called for guys to slip and fall down or not come up and play the pass. I mean, that was you can place the blame where you want to. I do think there was some element of the teaching obviously wasn't there all the way that it needed to be.
Absolutely.
So there's moments in that game where you can blame the coaches. There's also moments in that game where just watch it and you watch the players falling down and flailing and Colorado's players jumping up, making plays, doing the things they had to do to win that game. One team went out and had the killer instinct that they saw the opportunity to win that game, and they went and they made it happen with the opportunities they had. Travis Hunter forces a fumble. Shador gets away, throws the pass. Receivers jumping up and making catches. And they even had
after they lost the play after they had one drop.
I wanted to say that after they had the play where they dropped the Hail Mary, they got over it and they went and did it the very next play.
Yep.
Whereas Baylor, make a field goal. Go up 10. The game is over. You missed the field goal.
Yep.
You have an opportunity to tie up in overtime. Cross the goal line. You fumble the football and give it to them, and you end the game on a fumble into the end zone. Like, you have no killer instinct. You have absolutely zero dogs that can finish a game, and Colorado, for all anybody wants to say about them, and I felt good about my Colorado takes after that game, by the way, where I haven't been like all on them and this is failure. Like, give them a chance to breathe. They are as high as they have been since Dion arrived after Saturday night. Whether you love it or hate it, they are now must-watch TV because there's actually a little bit of substance to it still here as we enter week number 5. But Baylor doesn't know how to finish. I can't remember the last big game they won under Dave Aranda. It's been like
Oklahoma
2 years.
on the road in 2022.
2022.
Yeah.
That's the last time they've actually gone into a big game and won it. And the damnedest, most disappointing thing about it all is they played, except for like one play, well enough to win that game. They had an incredible game plan. They rolled in there. They were focused. They were playing hard. They weren't intimidated by any of the flash and dash or being in Boulder or the altitude or any of that. They looked like they had their minds right to go and win that football game. But when it boiled down to who's going to go out here and grab this game and win this Colorado had the dudes to go and do it. And Baylor is back to the drawing board. And this is another week where instead of it being, hey, we actually won 2 games in a row and here's some momentum, it's herky-jerk, stop and start, win and loss, and it's just impossible to build things that way.
And the safety's in the back of the end zone.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Wait, why would you be in the back of the end zone?
You have one-on-one on a Hail Mary?
Yeah.
No, it's so, Craig, everything you just said, I mentioned I agree with it totally. And where it comes down to, like, when I was picking this game, I knew it was going to be close, and I picked Baylor because I thought all of the little things would be in Baylor's favor. Colorado doesn't have game plans so much as they just have athletes. And what Baylor doesn't have is they don't have guys who are, like, there are 3 possible first-round picks on that offense for Colorado right now, and then a couple of guys will be on the second day. So they have those dudes. They have guys. Baylor doesn't really have those guys on offense, but the game plan was right. This was like all those little things are right. All they had to overcome was the minute they got a chance to put Colorado on the ground, they had to. But if you give Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter any kind of openings to make plays, those dudes are going to do it because that's what they do, and they both did.
Matthew McCallum, I'm going to disagree with you. You're saying we're taking the wrong take on this. It's not because Colorado had the dudes to do it. Colorado didn't remotely deserve that win from how they played. No, they have the dudes. The long throw to Travis Hunter in the first place. The play by Horn when he spun barely off the ground and made a big play. You beat Colorado by eliminating, or you're not going to eliminate, by making sure you don't give up too many explosive plays, and they did. And in the end, Colorado showed some balls by how they did what they did, won the game, and then Baylor kick the field goal, and none of that drama even gets into play.
Yeah,
Kick it. It's a 40-something yard field goal, make it.
I know that there's going to be a lot of people that look at that and don't want to give Colorado credit, instead would rather point to how Baylor choked it away. I think it's both. I think that, Dom Richardson didn't fumble because the ball slipped out of his hands. Travis Hunter made him fumble at the goal line. The Hail Mary had to be thrown by somebody and caught by another, and it wasn't caught the first time, and they went back to it, and it happened again. Like, Baylor threw up all over themselves. But it's a little bit of both. Colorado also went out there when they could have easily caved. They could have easily just been like, all right, that's it, man. We're we're out of this game. And they didn't. They fought hard. Did you not see how much that meant to them at the end of the game? Like, they desperately needed to win like that. And yes, Baylor left the door open when they could have closed it and locked it. And that's the point. They didn't. And Colorado, instead of tripping over themselves and Shedeur throwing a pick or not catching the Hail Mary, they did the things they had to do, given the opportunity to win that game, whereas Baylor didn't. So if you don't want to give Colorado a ton of credit for that, I can understand that. But you have to give them some credit for that. It doesn't mean they're going to go win 10 games. But that was as big of a win as Deion's had since beating Nebraska, and at least one B with the Nebraska win, I would say, in his 2 years so far.
I would say TCU is still bigger.
Because TCU at the beginning. I forgot about that.
What we didn't know yet about TCU.
TCU didn't end up being very good.
No, but it was like it launched.
It was a big deal for them at the time. But yeah, I mean, that was a game that if you're Baylor, you are just absolutely nauseous after that one because there was no reason you should have lost that game. But again, it comes down to players make plays, and they could not execute in the end, no matter how many opportunities they were given when it mattered the most. And Colorado did, and that's why the Buffs got that huge victory and why it's back to the drawing board for Dave Aranda and the Bears and seemingly never able to leave a place of just being not good, not bad, but just whatever they are.
They left the door open.
Yeah.
And they can't afford to do that. Again, make the field goal. Why don't you put that on the kicker? Make the field goal. You kicked a couple of long ones the week before. Make the field goal. And the game is over. But again, you opened the door. Now, Kansas State has to be wondering what's going on with them. This is from Riley Gates. You hired Matt Wells for a reason. You pushed Will Howard out to make room for Avery Johnson for a reason. You got Dylan Edwards from the portal for a reason. The time to stop being conservative is now. If you don't do it, stop using it as an excuse. Then you're just incapable. That was a tremendous strength, power win by BYU. They scored in every way possible. And K-State now has no room for error after the loss to BYU in Provo. No room for error unless they go. You have to win the conference title. That's it.
Yeah,
because that's you don't have. Big 12 teams don't have a lot of room for error, and they got that's their mulligan.
Yeah, I mean
if they keep winning.
Yeah, if they keep. I mean, they're like Craig said earlier. Is there a second team coming out of this conference now? The way we look at it, no, probably not. There's not two teams that are good enough to be in the playoff if they got to that point where there could be a team that's the winner of the conference and another team that's in the 12. I just don't see it. And K-State they've got they've got some growing up to do because they really looked like they didn't know what was going on the other night, and they were not playing the way that Chris Kleiman teams normally play. I think their fronts are not as strong as they have been. I think that they've got to figure out what their offense is, but pushing quarterbacks out the door for the young guy, sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. I mean, Oklahoma, it hasn't worked so far.
Yeah.
Paul, I never talk about your team, and here you are trying to make – no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we'll get into OU at Tennessee and all that.
As an example, like just they've just got some work to do, and maybe this isn't the year. Maybe it's next year's the year because Avery Johnson will be another year in, but nobody wants to hear that.
Chris Kleiman
go ahead.
No.
I mean, just go ahead and say it.
Here's a note from Chris Kleiman from Landon Reinhardt after the game. He gave Kalani Sitake what was a very emotional embrace, like as if he's hurting. Kleiman, his team loses. There may not be a better man in the business than Kalani. Love the guy. As crushed as I am as how we played, I told him I was happy for him. They now come to Waco, but that was pretty cool to see Kleiman say that about a guy that we like quite a bit in Kalani Sitake.
Seconded, Chris. Really do like Kalani Sitake. Great guy.
Yeah, that was a cool moment, and we are huge fans of Kalani Sitake as well, so glad he's getting some flowers, and that was a huge win for BYU. It was an incredible win for the Cougars, and just a lot of really cool moments in that game. Got back from Lincoln and was able to watch that and really enjoy that with my sister and my brother-in-law, and we were just jaws on the floor when Parker Kingston returned that punt. That was an incredible play. They had a bunch of big plays in that game. Jake Ratzlaff has performed admirably and has really done well in the QB1 spot for the Cougars. It's not always flashy or perfect, but he's leading them well. And, you wonder just the competition in the offseason. You see why he's won it now, like between he and Gary Bohannon, the way he's helped guide them. But you see them winning because of a variety of different things, whether it's the defense making plays or Parker Kingston and special teams or the offense doing what they need to do when the time comes. They have started off 4-0 and have to feel really great because they were not a team that I was super high on coming into this year. I mean, just with the question at quarterback, even though we saw a little bit of Retzloff last year and just not really knowing enough in terms of just like who was going to step up and make plays outside of like a Chase Roberts, and they've been able to just grind, man. That win in Dallas against SMU, and now this win against Kansas State. Those are two big W's in this first month that have you feeling a lot differently, at least me feeling a lot differently about BYU's potential. I don't think they're going to go 10-2 necessarily. I don't think they're on their way to the Big 12 championship game no matter what, but they're putting themselves in a really good spot, and they're off to a start that's got them playing full of confidence, and it's a great thing to see.
Another team, guys, that was picked near the bottom of the Big 12 that annually this seems to happen, that has at least put themselves in the early conversation, even though it's just one conference game. They're 4-0. They won a game. Let's also not forget they won a game, what was it, at Arkansas? And now they win at home against Kansas State.
No, they didn't win at Arkansas.
Was it who did
Oklahoma State played Arkansas.
Who did BYU beat earlier this year? SMU in Dallas, who, of course, that gets to my next thing. SMU and TCU. Wow. An absolute blitzkrieg with SMU smoking TCU. Sonny Dykes getting ejected. Back-to-back unsportsmanlike penalty calls after an opening kickoff was called back. SMU dumped on their neighbor to the west and made them like it.
They did, and I had one follow-up is that's what BYU did. Let's take a moment to understand that, yes, they won that game. They beat the dog mess out of Kansas State. They beat them by nearly 30 points. When's the last time you've seen that with K-State football?
Yeah.
Especially a K-State football team that rolled into this league thinking that they were going to be one of the top two, and they still might be when all is said and done. But I think we just need to appreciate that not only did BYU win that game, they beat the dog mess out of Kansas State, which is just something I don't feel like you see happen very often. So I wanted to add that to there. But for TCU, that was an ugly, unacceptable, maddening, disappointing, infuriating loss.
Yeah, and for sure that infuriating was Sonny Dykes was infuriated. I'm curious on you guys' opinion on this. Every time we talk to Sonny Dykes, he seems like one of the nicest guys on earth. He seems that way to everybody around him. But I posit this to you. If you have a striped shirt on, he does not care for you.
Yeah, that's clear.
Yeah, he has anger. He has anger issues towards officiating. He really does. By the way, guys, just want to throw this in there. UTSA has committed to remain in the American Athletic Conference, too. That's another story with that. But SMU crushed them.
Yeah, I think we mentioned UTSA at the very beginning.
Yeah, I think it was in the tweet.
That was in the tweet.
Oh, okay.
That was amongst the four teams.
I'm sorry. I did not see the UTSA part. I'm trying to juggle.
We just needed to probably stay in one lane, I guess, because we are all
you guys,
swerving.
I do that, and then we interject. Yeah. That's part of this kind of the fun segment we have to open it all up. But, okay, now, Donovan Smith in Houston, shut out by Cincinnati. The Bearcats thumped them. Nice win for the Bearcats. He will still get the start for Houston against Iowa State, who rolled in their win. This from Joseph Duarte. Zion Chris will also play in that game. Boy, Houston's struggling, aren't they? They really, really are. Let's pass the basketball news on CBS in the Big 12, Garrett, if that's okay. Craig and I went to, with Jennifer and Daniel, flew into Omaha, went to the game on Friday. Just a note, Nebraska lost. That's what they do when it comes to close games. Here's a note about them, the Huskers, in overtime. They have now not scored in 7 consecutive overtime games, which also means if they got the ball first, they didn't kick a field goal or any kind of points, and then the other team closed them out. They have not scored in 7 consecutive overtime games, and they didn't get close to the end zone after Illinois scored in like 1 or 2 plays to take the first points and only points in overtime on Friday night.
Yeah, that was one of the most grisly overtime series I've ever seen. But glad that you guys got to go and that you got to experience it, and now it's shot into your veins, and you're probably not going to be able to stay away for another 65 years. I mean,
Well, me, Jen, and Daniel will be back at some point. I'm sure.
Yeah,
we'll get the. I
made it 38 years away from Fenway Park, and then once I walked through the gates, I was mad at myself for not going.
Yeah, no,
before.
I did not realize it's just something about the schedule and also high school football conflicts. But they have these nonstop flights. I don't think they always have from Dallas into Omaha. It's an easy, less than an hour drive. Garrett, do you have any of the pictures? There's Craig, Daniel, and Jennifer standing on the sideline prior to the game. We had sideline passes thanks to Dr. Elza and Matt Rule. And that is one hell of a running back from the University of Georgia and the Rams, and Todd Gurley, who was there on the sideline as they were having a conversation with him.
Craig, was he just like there?
Yeah, he was just there hanging out. My brother-in-law is a guy that just can talk to people. I mean, he's just good about talking to people and meeting people. And so, of course, he was the one to go up to Todd Gurley and just start chatting with him. And they were boys by the time this thing was over, But thank you to all of the fine folks at Nebraska for the opportunity, to be down on that field for like an hour plus prior to the game, just to kind of take it all in from that vantage point was really exceptional and a once-in-a-lifetime type of a thing. It felt like because I never knew if we were going to ever go to that stadium or if I'd ever make it there. And so not only did we make it there, but we're sitting there on the field and sitting out there for quite a while. Could have watched the game down there, but I wanted to sit down. Like after a while, I was like, I want to sit down and not be tiptoeing trying to look over people. So we eventually did that, but not before. I got to see Todd Gurley down there, and he was just hanging out. And I think his connection to Nebraska was like their strength and conditioning coach, I believe, is what the connection was.
Used to be at Baylor. Campbell.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, what's his name? Corey Campbell.
Yep.
So that was the connection. That's why Todd Gurley was there. But they had a lot of other former players that were down there, not really recognizable guys. Not that Todd Gurley's a former player, but just in that area, there were a lot of other former guys down there. So it got crowded, and we eventually went up to our seats, and it was an incredible atmosphere.
Yeah, there's a picture outside of where they played the College World Series as we were on our way out of town with Jennifer, Craig, and me, and then also with Daniel. Garrett, do you have the video? Can you play the video? This was the video. Again, there's a shot of me on the sideline. This is the light show between the third and fourth quarter. And honestly, that place was 99.9% pure red. And you hear about the I've never been there. I've been to games. I've seen them take over stadiums. But that was an experience. Craig, what was your favorite part of it?
Just being there and being able to take in the history of that stadium, and just having not been there before, picking up all the ins and outs of what it's like to view a game there. Now I have a better understanding for the fan base and their pride and their turnout and their love for Nebraska football. I mean, you can kind of tell that pretty easily because it's the only show in town and in that state, but it's really evident when you're there just how much they love Nebraska. And, it was a sea of red, and it was an incredible in-game atmosphere. They did a lot of really cool things that I don't know how common all those are, but I thought that was an excellent game production of just having people excited. And you stand up most of the time, especially in that game. Kudos to Illinois. They played a great game. It was fun to watch Dylan Raiola do his thing. He's obviously a very talented player and had a couple mistakes that probably hurt them, but he's going to be excellent moving forward. And I just think it was a great Big Ten football game that didn't end the way you wanted it to if you were hoping for Nebraska to win. But outside of that, it was about all that you could have wanted in an experience.
And by the way, a field goal that they missed 3 minutes or so to go, just like the one Baylor missed, that might have given them what they needed. And that's something that they just don't do. They don't kick the clutch field goal. And they didn't, and they lost in overtime, and Illinois now gets to face Penn State this week. Blake Shapen is out for the year. Jeff Levy, the head coach at Mississippi State, put this up. Blake, of course, played his career up until this year at Baylor, the ultimate competitor, teammate, unquestioned leader in our program. They were beaten over the weekend, but he is now out for the year. hate to see that news for Blake Shapen at Mississippi State.
Yeah, and, I'm sure he can get a medical red shirt and get this year of eligibility back, but you got to wonder how much longer, he's going to hang in there too.
There's a lot of comparisons to Charlie Brewer, and it's like that has continued to track of just seems like you can never just not have something go wrong, right? It's finally a new, fresh spot for him. He's in the SEC. He's back, in the Southeast, and he's a starter, and this and that, and then he gets hurt. It's just like, I don't know, it just feels like one step forward, one step back sometimes with his career, and that's kind of how it felt with Charlie Brewer a lot of times as well. But I hate that for Blake. I think he was in a good offense for his skill set and was a good first-year quarterback for Lebby as he tries to get this thing off the ground. Obviously, it's going to take a Herculean effort to get this thing off the ground because they're really struggling right now. But we're able to get the win over Eastern Kentucky, and so there's that. But, they're a bottom feeder in the SEC right now, and this is probably not going to help matters, losing a veteran quarterback. But I don't think he was going to take you to extreme heights. So ultimately, I hate this for Blake. I hate this for him, and I don't know if this is how his career ends. But if it does, then good luck to you, and if it's not, good luck to you as well.
Ari Temkin with the Big 12 Network Radio show on TuneIn Radio will join us in the next segment. By the way, Chris Jenkins, congratulations. You won the college football pick'em contest from over the weekend.
9-1.
And 9-1.
Yeah.
And Samantha Duvall will be in touch with you on the gift card you get from TexasBeefHouse.com. $150 thanks to our good friend and everyday loyal watcher, viewer, supporter in Kim Coulter. Later on, news on LSU's dynamic player Harold Perkins. Florida State beat Cal, and a note from an ACC reporter on that. So much to get to. We can't do it all in the first segment. We tried to, and I probably messed it up, it seems. But when we come back, Ari Temkin, our pod for the Big 12 at 4, Greg Wrubell, the voice of BYU at 4:25, and then Graham Coffey will join us. Phil Bennett, too. This is 365 Sports. PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. Father Time. It's part of life, things that just start to change in your body as you get older. And for men, testosterone level can go lower and lower and lower. And when that happens, if you don't catch it, you could lose a lot of things that otherwise we just kind of took for granted. For example, your sex drive. For example, your energy. You may have trouble with your sleep habits aren't the same. Things that can happen, your testosterone level can drop, and Dr. Petty will try to find out if that is the issue. If you have any of those symptoms, go to PettyClinicLowT.com. Tell them I sent you. Dr. Petty and his staff will set you up to get your blood work. They'll take care of that for you. Get the results of your testosterone level, and if it is too low, he can give you an option to increase your testosterone level so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be at PettyClinicLowT.com.
Jeep Adventure Days are here at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive home the 2024 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon Hybrid and save $13,000. Plus, you may qualify for $7,500 in federal tax credit. Don't miss out on this powerful deal. Visit Allen Samuels in Waco today. First responders get an extra $500.
Come by. Let's be friends.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Ghost Hydration is a fully transparent, fully loaded, full-flavored hydration drink that we've all been waiting for. Ghost is caffeine-free with electrolytes, 0 sugar, and low sodium that'll hydrate your body before, during, and after your workout. Consumer loved with authentic flavors, so grab and enjoy a Sour Patch Kids Blue Raspberry and Red Berry, along with the Kiwi Strawberry, Orange Squeeze, or Lemon Lime. Ghost Hydration can truly be used anytime. Remember, it's formulated for sports, but made for life.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
When you work with a bank, you should expect the best of everything. That includes face-to-face personal service and the kind of community banking care that only comes from one neighbor to another. That's exactly what you'll get from the First National Bank of Central Texas, where you will know your banker works just as hard as you do. Once again, that's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Settle for nothing less than the first. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Big 12 Radio on TuneIn. Ari Temkin joins us, and it's great to have you every week if we can, Ari. I know you got a busy schedule, too. Utah, BYU, they flex their muscles. Some teams have to be going like, what in the world with the cleanup? And then, of course, Colorado with the big-time play at the end to win it overtime. BYU, K-State, let's start with that one.
Yeah, and what a weekend for Baylor and Kansas, my alma mater, and of course, Baylor, team that's near and dear to your hearts. But, yeah, brutal endings for both of those teams and both of those games. This is certainly one to remember for BYU. You know, I think in a year last year for BYU, for Cincinnati, for Houston, it was sort of a forgetful year. This was a incredible win. BYU did not have one of these kinds of wins in the Big 12 last year. It basically came down to the floodgates completely opening up. This game was 6-3, closing in on the last minute or so before half. K-State has the football. DJ Giddens had a fumble return for a touchdown. Then on the next possession for K-State, Tyler Batty, the talented BYU pass rusher, has an interception after 2 plays. And then a few plays after that, it's Jake Retzloff to Chase Roberts for a touchdown. Then it goes to half. In the first drive of the third quarter, Avery Johnson's intercepted. And then after a 3-and-out following another miscue by K-State, that incredible punt return for kickoff or punt return for touchdown by Parker Kingston. That is one of the more incredible punt returns you'll ever see for touchdown. So it was 31 unanswered for BYU in this game. After leading 6-3, K-State found himself down a big 34-6, and it was just the floodgates that opened from there. I mean, it's one of the more wild games you'll ever see in terms of mistakes being made. Normally we see K-State being, special teams but in this game, they just were not. And there were a lot of great special teams plays. Obviously, Josh Cameron had some for Baylor, but really across the Big 12 landscape, there were tons of great special teams plays and kick returns and punt returns for touchdown. But yeah, this just went from bad to worse for K-State. They just couldn't stop the bleeding. And once it seems like Avery Johnson kind of got in his head a little bit, he just couldn't get out of it. And it just was mistake after mistake after mistake. And it wasn't just Avery, it was punt return. It was everybody making mistakes in this one.
Ari, let's talk about that Kansas-West Virginia game. It was a prove-it game for both teams, and it was evenly matched. But Garrett Green, who I think for a fan base has to be one of the most frustrating quarterbacks in the country, in that he can do things like he did in the fourth quarter of that game where he's the super athlete, and then other games he's just not there. But what did you think about that, and what do you think Kansas does to fix what are – especially on offense, chemistry problems?
Yeah, I mean, I think, target number one for Kansas fans is former Baylor offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes. He's in such a tough spot when you think about having to take over for Andy Kotelnicki, who, he put some eye-popping offenses together for Kansas. And so for KU fans that were used to seeing what we saw in that Andy Kotelnicki era, the Jeff Grimes era is off to an inauspicious start, to say the least. Look, I put some of this on Jeff Grimes. I think in some ways it's probably overstated. I put some of it on Jalen Daniels. And look, sometimes, guys, things just work and click, and sometimes they don't. And I think that's kind of where we're at. Kansas just was in position over the last couple of years offensively where everything clicked. And at this point, it's like no matter what they call, it's the wrong play, or it's a missed throw, or it's an interception, or it's bobbled. Like there's just something wrong. But Kansas now has had 3 consecutive games here. They started 1-0 with their win over Lindenwood. Now have lost 3 consecutive games to Illinois, UNLV, and to West Virginia. And all of these games, Kansas has been leading late, and they've blown leads. And I think at one point, we're over 90% in terms of the win probability via ESPN in terms of their scoring. So 3 straight games, 3 games in which they've crumbled. And look, I do put this one, at least one specific play on Jeff Grimes. Their speed option for Kansas was working very well in this game. And then they were faced with a 3rd and 3 after West Virginia was down 10. So this game was 28-17 with less than 5 minutes to go. West Virginia got the score to go 28-24. And Kansas faced a 3rd and 3 and just kind of ran the ball instead of running that speed option, which again had been so successful all game, whether it was to the left or to the right. They just had a ton of success with it. For some reason, they didn't use it. Then they ended up punting the ball right back to Garrett Green in the offense, who went right down the field and scored. West Virginia scored 15 points, basically 2 minutes of game action. And it was like everything went wrong for Kansas in that final 3 minutes. Everything went right for West Virginia. Credit Garrett Green for making the plays. I mean, you're right, Paul. Can be maddening at times, but man, he made the plays and the throws in this game to win them the game, to get them 15 unanswered. So awfully similar to what we saw between Baylor and Colorado on Saturday.
Yeah, let's talk Baylor, Colorado. What an incredible, entertaining game all the way until the very end, and obviously a big win for the Buffaloes, Ari. So I guess it's kind of like a 3-pronged question. What was your disbelief level there at the end, watching how that all unfolded? And how big of a win is this, do you think, for Colorado? While simultaneously, what do you think this means for Dave Aranda and the Bears, who just can't seem to finish or win a big game, even when it's right there for the taking?
Yeah, and it's a great question because I think in some ways there's a lot of positives to take away from this game. I mean, the way that Sawyer Robertson played was phenomenal. I mean, the dude played so well, and I think early in the season we saw DeQuan Finn missing open guys and off target. And so I think just on the one hand, the way Sawyer Robertson played was really, really good. I mean, that 4th and 2 run for 42 yards, the touchdown was incredible. I mean, he had the great throw at the beginning of the game, the touchdown to Monterey Baldwin, where he laid out and caught it, and then Hal Presley with the one-handed grab. I mean, there were some big-time plays in this game on both sides. Cameron, every punt return or kick return seemed like it was going to go for 6. It was incredible how bad they were at trying to get stops. But like the thing to me, and to go back to your question about how much disbelief, like a lot, simply because they missed the Hail Mary on the previous play. Mm-hmm. So how do you let that happen twice? It's one thing for them to just miss entirely, but I mean, Shepard was there. The defensive back had fallen down. Like that ball has to be caught on the play prior to the Wester touchdown. So for me, all of the good in this game was sort of undone by what we saw in those final 2 plays, because it's like, shame on you if it happens to me once, shame on me if it happens to me twice. How on earth do you have a defensive-minded head coach? And I know after the game he talked about, well, we had an injured linebacker, and so we weren't, we overloaded one side, but it's like, it's crazy to think you can watch that play happen to Shepard and have him miss it and then not refocus your team to be like, hey, do not let anybody behind you. They literally need a touchdown. Keep everything in front of you. Like, even if they catch it at the 1, make sure they do not get into the end zone. So I think, Craig, the answer to your question is like, I was shocked because it was like lightning struck twice. Like if it happens once, you have to feel good that they didn't convert it. But the fact that they went back to the well and then found Wester on the next play, that to me is the biggest indictment on Aranda and on this team. It sort of undid all of the positives for me from this game, because this was a game you have to win. And again, especially given you had 2 shots at it, you stop them the first shot. That should have been it. You shouldn't give them another chance to get behind you. That's one huge mistake that did not get rectified within the course of 2 plays.
Yeah, and especially I said the winner of that game, I didn't say they would get to a bowl game, but it gives them that chance, because that's a game. You look down at the others. BYU now coming in with smoke coming out of their ears. I don't know. Do they follow that up with a win against Kansas State, and that's who they are, or not? But Oklahoma State can't run the ball. Bowman was just not good. Your thoughts about them? Tech had a nice win. They've now put 2-2 together. Cincinnati with a nice win. Iowa State with a nice win. Do you have like do your tiers in any way change the power structure in the conference?
Well, look, I mean, it's hard to look away from the BYU win and not, they're 4-0 now. Their defense is legit. I think that's the biggest factor for me is, crazy things happen at night in Provo. I get it. And let's see if it travels. But one thing that we've seen now, I went to the SMU BYU game a few weeks ago and was not very impressed with either team. And then now look at how both of those teams look. I mean, BYU held SMU out of the end zone and held K-State out of the end zone. That's two of the most explosive offenses in college football. SMU just hung 66 on TCU, and BYU held them without a touchdown in that game. So I like biggest takeaway for me through the first 4 games of this season in college football in the Big 12 is BYU's defense is legit. And Jay Hill, a year after his defense was really, really bad, seems to have figured some things out with BYU on the defensive side of the football. The other thing is, and obviously you mentioned this with Oklahoma State, like Utah has joined the Big 12 and they have come into our living room and they have put their feet up with their shoes on and they're asking us to serve them drinks. I mean, this was, the fact that the line moved as much as it did told us that Vegas didn't think Cam Rising was going to play, and voila, he didn't. And yet, despite that, they still absolutely demolished one of the best teams in the Big 12 up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I mean, to me, Wilson and Bernard, both on 3rd and 4th down, it was demoralizing for Oklahoma State's defense. They continued to line up and run on 3rd and long, 4th and long, 3rd and short, 4th and short. It didn't matter. I mean, they converted a 3rd and 11 on the ground. They converted a 3rd and 7 on the ground. Isaac Wilson had a very impressive 4th and 1 conversion. He had a 4th and 2 conversion. It just didn't matter. They knocked Oklahoma State off the football and were able to win because of their run game. And then you mentioned Alan Bowman. I mean, I was very surprised that Gundy went to Rangel. Obviously we've seen this previously when he started and rotated 3 quarterbacks for the first 3 weeks of the season. And Brock Heward kept talking about on the broadcast, give your guy a chance who's thrown 5 touchdowns in the last week, to get over this. And the fact that he sat for a quarter and a half, I don't know that helped them. I mean, do they win the game if Bowman plays the entire game? Probably not. But it just speaks to how good Utah's defense is. This is one of those years where we maybe weren't sure the type of personnel that Utah had and were they going to be as good on defense. They've got 2 NFL linebackers. I mean, they're absolutely locked down in terms of what they were able to do to a really high-powered Oklahoma State attack. Forget the rushing numbers because Oklahoma State needs to figure out how to run the football more effectively. But Oklahoma State's passing offense has been phenomenal this year, and they completely stymied that passing offense to the point that Bowman got replaced in that game. So, yeah, I mean, that one stood out in a big way because it was disheartening, I think, for like those of us that have covered this conference as long as we have and have been around this conference. We think about the old Southwest Conference Big 8 days. You want to think that we have some pride for the way things used to be, the early Big 12, but man, Utah just made themselves right at home in the new Big 12 with that win over Oklahoma State. And now you get a matchup this weekend between Oklahoma State and Kansas State that's kind of a must win for both of those programs. I hate to say it this early in the season, but if you find yourselves looking up at the standings at Utah or K-State or Oklahoma State, depending on who it is, that's going to be a tough to overcome in terms of conference standings. It's not obviously the death knell. It's 2 weeks into conference play, but man, it'd be tough to think that whoever loses the Oklahoma State-Kansas State game on Saturday would still win the conference.
Is it panic button Saturday for TCU and Kansas then?
Yeah, very much so. Man, that TCU loss, we could sit here, right, and bellyache the Kansas loss, and certainly I have the last 3 of them, but TCU's defense is unreal in terms of how bad it is. It looked the first couple of weeks like Andy Avalos had figured some things out and that they were going to be a much different, more explosive defense. As it turns out, the 27 points they give up to Stanford was the lowest amount of points they give up to an FBS opponent through the first 3 FBS opponents that they had. They obviously did a great job against Long Island, but since then it's been 27, 30 something, and now 66 to their 3 FBS opponents. Just absolutely brutal. And I think another team that cannot run the football. I mean, we have now seen a group of teams in the Big 12 that have just for whatever reason, 3-4 weeks into the season cannot run the football. Josh Hoover's been spectacular, but he had 2 interceptions, had another sacked fumble in this game. So 3 turnovers of the 5. This was not a recipe for success. You're -5 in the turnover margin. You give up a punt return for touchdown. This was sort of similar to the K-State BYU game where it was like, man, you just got caught up in a avalanche. And this one was, I want to say from a scoring standpoint, I had the numbers in front of me. So this game was close. It was 17 nothing SMU like that. Then it was 17-14. And then SMU basically put this game away with the final 3+ minutes of the first half. It went from 24-21 to 41-21 on that 17-0 run by SMU to put this thing away. And basically from that point on, TCU was trying to play catch up. But it was very similar to the Kansas State game insofar as the game kind of seemed out of reach at first. And then the floodgates opened and it was all bets are off going into halftime.
I guess final thing for me is, man, first of all, this conference is starting off to look just as entertaining as we predicted it might be. It's also probably going to cost them when it comes to playoff spots, and we knew that could also be a reality as well. But what do you think about Texas Tech beating Arizona State? They're obviously in Lubbock. That helps. It was a back and forth. They were mostly in the lead, but it was a close game at times throughout. They were able to get it done with Taj Brooks back. They're at 3-1. They're back at home this week. Just where kind of are they on your feelings level, the Red Raiders, right now?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say this week is the first week where it feels like it's appropriate to be, high on Texas Tech. Take the Wazoo game out of it because it was such a bad game. And obviously they didn't have Taj Brooks, and we see how much of a difference he makes. Now, does he change the game that much? Maybe. But, I mean, he's one of the best backs in the Big 12 and certainly in college football. Leading into this game, Arizona State had gone 5 of 6 on fourth down and was +6 in the turnover margin. They went 0 for 3 in this game and were -1. So we see the recipe for Arizona State to be successful. They've got to limit Sam Levitt's throws. As soon as Arizona State find themselves down multiple touchdowns, they're in a bad spot because Levitt is very limited as a passer. And he's still evolving. He's still becoming better. He's young and inexperienced. He's just not very good as a passer. This is another one of those games that it was Texas Tech was up 14-0, then it was 14-10, then Tech went up 24-10, and then they had this huge play by Cameron Scadaboo where he had a screen pass. He took 66 yards, and then he cashed it in for a touchdown, and that made the game 24-16, and that was as close as Arizona State would get because I thought Baron Morton did a great job spreading the ball around. He got a lot of receivers involved, Josh Kelly, Conyers, the tight end, and then once they got that lead in the second half, it was over because they were just able to run the ball so well with Taj Brooks, and he just kept moving the chains, keeping the clock moving. And I think that was kind of the story. Like once they got that lead, I think it was 27-16, it was over because they could just salt the game away with Taj Brooks. I think they added another field goal after that, but this is a recipe for Texas Tech to be very successful. The one thing coming into this season we knew that Texas Tech was going to need was to keep Baron Morton healthy. And so far he's been healthy and the results have been there. It's just the one blip is the Washington State game. And one, Washington State looks really, really good. And two, without Taj Brooks, who knows how that game would have gone had he been healthy. So huge loss for them in that game. And we see kind of the recipe for success. Spread the ball around, don't turn the ball over and feed Taj Brooks early and often. And that's what they did in this game. I also think for Arizona State, they, from an identity standpoint, we know who they are. And now this only, ratchets it up, teams forcing Levitt to throw in those situations.
Yeah, it's been an interesting start. It's a conference that always has a surprise or two. BYU's one of those, and who knows who else it might be. And there's always a team or two at the top that kind of blows a tire, and then they fight the rest of the year to try to get themselves back in position to do very well. UCF does get they get the attention coming up with the game against Colorado. I'm sure Colorado winning didn't hurt, but they get big noon on Saturday in Orlando, and I think that's great because it should have been in Stillwater this past weekend instead of in Columbus, Ohio.
Well, I agree. And look, I mean, Baylor had 8 sacks on Colorado. Baylor had 4 sacks coming into that game total and 8 sacks in this game, right? So, the question was, how much improved is Colorado's offensive line? I thought, man, Nebraska is really that good up front on the defensive side of the football. And man, now I'm not so sure that Colorado's improved at all on the offensive line. It's really incredible what Shedeur Sanders is able to do despite basically being pressured on every drop back. And again, 8 sacks. Like he was sacked 56 times last year, and it doesn't seem like he's on track for that to stop. So, I mean, UCF has added some pass rushers. Kelly's been really good to start. I mean, I think so far UCF, they've been really, really good. And the fact that they're a touchdown favorite right now, or I think a 2-touchdown favorite at this point against Colorado in this game, speaks to where Vegas thinks they are. And we look so much at their offensive productivity and the players they brought in through the portal, but defensively with Deshaun Pace, who came over in the portal as a linebacker from Cincinnati, and Kelly from Miami, like they're going to get after Shedeur Sanders. I just don't know how this dude survives the season. If the 8 sacks gets Baylor, I mean, there was that stretch there, and this is where I think the loss is so disappointing, guys. 4 sacks over 5 dropbacks before he took over in that game. So, number one, you're not going to get to him in terms of the mental part of it, because he's clearly like, you're just not going to impact his ability to continue to get up and throw. But that's just my concern for Colorado moving forward. It's why I like UCF in this game. I think they can get after Shedeur in a big way. And it's up to Pat Shurmur and Deion Sanders now to figure out how on earth they're going to keep Shedeur clean, because this dude has taken a beating over the last year plus now.
There's always been some things, not always, there's been things said about him, but that kid is tough as nails. I mean, tough as nails, because you're right, he took a beating.
I think you can talk about his ego or whatever, however you want to translate that, but anybody starts to say like Shedeur's not good or like that, you immediately just discredit yourself, because the dude can play. The dude can absolutely
He's entitled.
play.
He might be spoiled.
Sure.
He might say the wrong things, but the dude is a beast, and he is tough. He's insanely tough.
Thank you, Ari. Tell everyone they get you on TuneIn Radio, what time that you guys start every day.
No, appreciate it very much, Smokey. Check us out, tune in. If you don't have the app, go make sure to download it. We are the home of the Big 12, the exclusive home of the Big 12. We've got coaches shows, player interviews. We're going to have Kalani Sitake on tomorrow's show. So make sure to check it out, 7 to 10 a.m. Central on TuneIn. Again, just download the app. The show is free. It's going to ask you to, to sign up for TuneIn Premium, but you can just X that out, that offer it out, and check out the show for free every single day, Monday through Friday.
I just had somebody tell me that UCF has, I don't know if they have had any sacks on defense so far. I know they've been sacked 3 times, but I'm not sure exactly how much they've sacked the opposing quarterback. Well, they might get their feed this week. We'll see.
Yeah.
Ari, thank you.
This is the way to break that. No, I'm pretty sure Kelly has at least 1 sack.
Okay.
So I think they've got at least 1.
Yeah, UCF fan on the chat room. I was trying to look it up, but I was mainly just getting their offensive stats.
On the flip side, I am looking forward to the whole contingent of runners just smashing into that Colorado defense and seeing what that looks like ultimately over the course of 4 quarters. That's going to be very interesting, because that Colorado defense has got a little something to it, especially after last week. But I don't know if they're ready for just getting smashed over and over again by that running attack for the Knights. That's
or anybody else for that matter. Yeah. Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio on TuneIn, as he mentioned, each weekday morning, and including Kalani Sitake, who I think will join us at some point this week, one of our best friends of the show.
I need to try something real quick. I'm going to just keep talking. Okay, yeah, the cough button works.
No, I did, because I went to cough.
You know what? I'm sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I feel about you.
Yeah. Garrett, to just put it up and clarify today's news with the American Conference, here is the conference tweet, 100% committed. We broke that down a little bit early in the show, and again a couple other times. Everybody committed. Tony Petitti, Pernetti, has done a great job. And
Tim Pernetti.
Tim Pernetti has done a great job in making sure.
I know you think that we all look alike, but.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. No, you're right. So the American Conference, 15 members, 15 commitments, 1 American, the American way.
And the responses to this are not what you were hoping for if you're the American Conference, that you think everybody's celebrating, everybody being all as one and not moving. And there's a bunch of fans from a bunch of schools, especially schools like USF, who have been begging to get a bigger opportunity, that are not happy at all with this news today. But it's significant. Memphis, Navy, USF, Tulane, those schools in particular have been bandied about going back to even the Big 12 a couple of years ago. And then you got new schools like, a UTSA also being talked about with the Pac. So this is very interesting, and it makes you wonder what that Pac-12 package looked like that they were putting out there, because if everybody decided to stay in the American rather than go to the Pac, then the money obviously wasn't adding up, nor the opportunity.
Here's what I would caution fans who think that this should have been like a slam dunk to go to the Pac. My thing would be, is the new Pac really better than the AAC? Like, do you know that? Like, is the grass going to be greener on the other side for sure? Because there's a lot of unknowns here. And, you know, if you've got all these teams, now that the new pack is in trouble. I mean, they've got to find 2 teams to get to 8, and the 4 that left the Mountain West may still feel good about that, but they probably did so with the thinking that, oh, this is going to rope in the Memphises and USFs of the world. Well, not happening now.
Yeah, we'll see what else happens with the Mountain West and who stays committed. Air Force, of course, is one who has made it clear that they will. When we come back, a couple of the notes in the Big 12. We also will hear from Greg Wrubell, voice of BYU, on their huge win over the weekend against Kansas State, and a little bit later on, Graham Coffey with best game of the weekend. It all depends on who you are, but number 2 and number 4, Georgia at Alabama. He'll join us. This is 365 Sports. The Baylor Club home game this weekend, and they're having their 10th anniversary gala in the early part of October, 10 years anniversary of opening up McLean Stadium in 2014. Membership of the Baylor Club comes with the exclusive perks, special events, premium dining. Don't miss out. Call Skyler for more information on that. You also can reach out to Taylor or Sarah when it comes to planning a special event, whether it's a wedding, of just a good business meeting, a symposium. We host our annual Academic All-Stars banquet there every year in May, and man, do they take care of us. If you're craving a dining experience that's a cut above, the Baylor Club serves up gourmet meals, a view of McLean Stadium, and much more. They have fantastic chefs who make that cuisine taste so good for you. Celebrate Baylor pride at the Baylor Club. Alumni gatherings to game day festivities. The club is your home for everything green and gold. Go Sick 'em Bears. BaylorClub.com. The Baylor Club. General Manager Mike Mosel.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year. It's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's football and tailgate season. If you want product for the grill or smoker, charcoal, seasonings, marinades, sauces, Waco Custom Marketplace is your home to help prep, cook, and enjoy your food. Tailgate must like brisket, tri-tip, fresh-made burgers, sausage, chicken wings, and if you want steaks, call in your order and pick them up. Bacon wrap fillets or any kind of ribeyes. USDA Select, Choice, and Prime that melt in your mouth. House-made sausage and jerky. Also, Waco Custom Marketplace, a one-stop shop for tailgating, barbecue cook-offs, and family get-togethers, fundraisers with fair prices to you, the customer. A bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches. There's cold beer, wine, and soft drinks. Serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. A cut above the rest. Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em Bears.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
The AP Top 25 poll came out, of course, and there's a few changes. A couple of teams that fell backwards, and they should, and I think even a couple of teams that should fall out of the top 25, and I'm looking at you, Oklahoma. But here are the top 5, and again, numbers 2 and 4 played this week. Numbers 9 and 19 played this week, but there you have it. Texas just cruised past UL Monroe. Quinn Ewers, again, still not sure whether he plays against Mississippi State, and they obviously will not need him, but that doesn't mean if he can play. Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, and Tennessee went into Norman and dominated that game, and the score was not indicative of that game like Utah, Oklahoma State, or the Cowboys and Ravens.
You had to bring it up. But yeah, no, yeah, I know. I saw Jack actually sent us a text because I don't think he got to see it because he was getting ready for Colorado and Baylor. But he's like, Oklahoma State only lost by 3, but they dropped 6 spots. And I was like, look, they valiantly came back to get that to 3.
Box score watching, yeah.
But yeah, that's just box score watching because until the last 2 minutes of that game when they scored that last touchdown, Oklahoma State looked in no way like they should be there.
Exactly.
It was a bad day in Stillwater.
Oh, yeah, they deserve to get dinged for that performance, and what an incredible showing from Utah. I mean, they've kind of been painted to be the new bad guy in the conference a little bit, but, I mean, you can't say they don't walk the walk. They went into a place that a lot of teams still haven't won in. They find it impossible to win in, and they went and made it look like it was easy with a backup quarterback. I mean, that was incredible to see just how not much of an issue that was for them on the road. So, yeah, give Utah their flowers. They are definitely deserving of them right now, and they are the class of the Big 12 through 4 weeks with, 8 more weeks of actual games, or more than 8 weeks of actual games to go, but 8 games left to play in the regular season. Thing that immediately jumps out is if not for Ohio State, the entire top 6 would be SEC schools. You got Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Ole Miss, all in the top 6. Only Ohio State there at number 3. So that's something that you think gets broken up at some point. And then again, you said it earlier, Oklahoma's for some reason still in the top 25. I don't think they're necessarily deserving. I think that's more or less like you already dropped them 6 spots. It's kind of hard to say you should drop them 10. Even though I think if you had done that, people wouldn't have really barked too much about that. Tennessee's very good. But, yeah, I mean, Oklahoma slid pretty well, but
all right,
I don't know that they're deserving. I wonder about Texas A&M even as well, being at 24. Like, that's the SEC thing that people they were like, no, well, who's better than Ole Miss? It's like it's not that. It's the backloading to where it's not you're talking about 5 of the top 6, because 5 of the top 6 best teams probably are from the SEC right now based on what we've seen. That's a very legitimate chance. But don't tell me that, like, 12 of the 25 are. Or, not that extreme, but when you start to add up and go, well, there's 5 of the top 6. Deserve it right now. But then when you get into there's this many in the top 25, it's like, yeah, because A&M's some reason still in there, and Oklahoma's hanging around in the back half, and maybe they're better than a lot of the other teams. But good to see Boise get in there. Good to see BYU get in there this week. That's big for them to get to the top 25.
Boise first time in like 4 or 5 years, too.
BYU, now you've got to hold on to that because this is not a guaranteed win at Baylor. Depending on how the Bears respond to last week. So we'll see if BYU's able to hang in there. But Oklahoma State, they're in danger of dropping out. I mean, they dropped 6 spots, and they're now at number 20. And depending on how that K-State game goes, they could drop out, or K-State could drop out.
Losers out.
Yeah, losers out, because K-State dropped 10 spots.
No, they did. Oklahoma State and Oklahoma both. It was a bad weekend for the state of Oklahoma. Washington State's just outside the top 25. Because of how they play, because of their offense. I'm not saying they would beat Oklahoma, but I'd pick them to if they played. They'll score points, and Oklahoma right now seems to be like just a mess. Although they're going to change to probably, you think, Hawkins the quarterback?
Yeah, I think you have
forward?
to.
Yeah.
I always had an issue. If you guys remember, I've always been very hesitant to go all in on Jackson Arnold. Not that I didn't ever think he was a talented player, but just the conversation around him, it was awfully similar to like what you heard about Arch Manning, and I just never considered him to be like that surefire. He's going to roll in and be that big of an impact. He obviously was on the team last year and behind Dylan Gabriel, but while he was, you just kind of feel that build of like this is his team in the future, in the near future. And then sure enough, Gabriel leaves, they go full in on Arnold, and I just was never just all in on this being the guy, and this is the time, and it's going to be great. I had my concerns, and those concerns have been validated through the first 4 weeks of the season. And yeah, the offense isn't quite what Oklahoma fans have been watching for the last several years. It's been very frustrating, but Michael Hawkins came in there, and he looked like he should be the starting quarterback based on what we saw from him. Now, I hope he's not concussed after the big head slam there late in the game. But if he's good to go, then yeah, I think based on what we saw, you have to go with Michael Hawkins as the starting quarterback. And
is he the starter because he's better, or because how bad Jackson
both.
Arnold is? Okay,
I think he just lit that team up and gave them a new, much needed jolt. And I think he played well. And I think he looked like a guy who knew what he was doing, and looked like he was ready to lead. And I think that he did everything you could ask somebody in that spot to come in and do. And so I would move forward with him. And I know that there's politics involved probably when it comes to having a high-profile quarterback like Jackson Arnold, but ultimately you've got to do what's best for the team. And I think based on what we've seen, it does not hurt, especially knowing what's coming up. You at least throw Hawkins out there, because what if he is better right now? And what if he is the guy that can make you win 8 games as opposed to 5 or 6 games, right? So that's what you have to look at, is the big picture. And big picture, I think putting Jackson Arnold back out there just because he's Jackson Arnold and he's supposed to be great eventually, versus the guy who might actually be the right guy right now in this moment with this great defense. That's a interesting position to be in.
Oklahoma has been faced with this choice before, and they made the right one with Caleb Williams and Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, they did.
Brent Venables, there's precedent for it, although he wasn't the coach then. And I do, like, it was a big bet to push Dylan Gabriel out the door when I doubt he would have gone anywhere if you just said you're the starter next year. I
probably not. I just wonder though, with like his Hawaii ties and the West Coast and being at Oregon, like I wonder how much that was a dream that he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. But I would assume that Oklahoma could probably have been like, just run it back. But I don't know that for sure.
We had his NIL agent on, if you remember, and he's like, look, we had deals in place for the next year that now we have to reappropriate so that he can kind of pay back those now that he's gone. So yeah, I mean, there's not that it was malicious or anything. It was just the circumstances of he's no longer at Oklahoma and he's leaving, and these things are scheduled for later. So, but yeah, I wonder, and they might have done a disservice to Jackson Arnold because he's clearly not ready to be that dude in the SEC yet.
But this was all talked about. Brent Venables discussed this. He said Jackson Arnold's turning the football over too much. I mean, bottom line. So he was not backing down from that in the post game. He said they went with Hawkins because just Arnold's not running the offense well enough right now. So, again, you got to do what's best for you moving forward, and I think that might be Hawkins so long as he's not rattled from banging his head the other night.
By the way, I have the note on UCF and sacks. We'll have it later on. I just looked that up from what we were talking about with Colorado playing in Orlando. But Greg Wrubell, the voice of BYU Athletics, joins us after their huge win, an emphatic win against Kansas State over the weekend, and now coming back to Waco. They've been here before recently. The year, in fact, it was announced they would be joining the Big Ten. Greg, thank you very much for your time. I got to tell you, I mean, Kalani Sitake and the Cougars look really good in all the phases. And what has been, at least up until now, in your opinion, the difference?
Much more consistent play defensively. I think this defense is for real. They've played 4 teams so far, 2 power conference teams, and 2 pretty good offenses in SMU and Kansas State. Neither team got into the end zone. SMU has held to 5 field goals. Same SMU team that put up 66 on TCU on Saturday. So I think if you can keep SMU and K-State out of the end zone, be where they are right now in terms of pass efficiency defense, red zone defense, they look to be for real. Jay Hill's in his second year as defensive coordinator. Kalani said it would take some time for the thing to start really clicking. Year 1 was a learning experience for Jay as a new coordinator with BYU, for his players with him. And much of these guys are back in the same scheme under Coach Hill in year 2. So I think that's a big part of it, is how consistent they've been defensively. The offense has been okay, good enough to win 4 games. But I think right now the defense is kind of carrying this team. And then when you add on the fact they've now scored special teams touchdowns in back-to-back weeks against Wyoming, first kickoff return touchdown in 10 years, And then last week against K-State, first punt return touchdown in 11 years. So you go a decade without them, and then you get them in back-to-back weeks. That's been helpful as well. And I think Jake Retzloff, the quarterback, year 1 to year 2. In year 1, he comes in as a replacement starter for an injured Keaton Slovis and goes 0-4 in his starts. This year, as the veteran guy, his team hasn't lost a game with him at the helm. He beat out Gary Bohannon, former Baylor Bear, for the quarterback job. And I think Gary was brought in with the thought that this could be the guy with 1 year left to play. Jake would have had to play really well to beat Gary Bohannon out. That's exactly what he did.
Greg, everybody we talked to, I think including you, when we asked, like, how do you feel about this team going into the season, was kind of answered incomplete. You know, like, well, don't know. How much of that was not knowing how good the defense was going to be in year 2 and how much they had grasped that system, and how much just you needed to see something on the field about this team's moxie, and even though they're not a veteran-laden team, they seem to play like it.
Well, a lot centered on the quarterback question. You didn't know it was going to be a true competition between Jake Retzloff and Gary Bohannon. And I would say 2 weeks into camp, it still wasn't decided. I think Jake really pulled ahead toward the end of camp. So a lot of the uncertainty was based on the identity of the starting quarterback. You kind of knew whoever it was, he'd have a good crew of wide receivers around him, pretty good tight end room, and a lot of guys in the running back room with a couple of returning vets. Interestingly, both those guys have missed the last 2 games. And so BYU's gotten through that as well. So once the quarterback thing got figured out, I think you felt that, okay, let's see how this thing comes together with the experience at the skill positions around him. Jake would have to be better, and he is and has been. Defensively, I think was where the biggest question lied, where was how would the team perform in year 2 with Jay's scheme? And parenthetically, the secondary, which is usually a question mark at BYU, has been less of one this year. Jacob Robinson really locking things down as the one DB that people kind of knew about and talked about. But people like Evan Johnson have played well opposite him. Maury Bamba gets back off injury this past week and plays some meaningful reps. The safety room uses a lot of guys, but Raider Namouni is kind of emerging as a marquee safety, and then a couple of freshmen, including Tommy Prasis, who scored that scoop and score touchdown for BYU last week, have also performed well in the secondary out of the safety spot. So there were questions to answer. Some were personnel related, but most were scheme related in terms of how would that second year scheme kind of click with these guys under Jay Hill.
The big return. Take us through from your standpoint, watching that unfold. I mean, I was sitting there at my sister's house with my brother-in-law, and clearly things are already all in BYU's favor, and then Parker Knighton busts this thing loose, and we were actually trying to figure out how many yards he actually ran. You know, and I think SportsCenter afterwards actually did it, and it was like 150-plus yards on that return. But what a thing of beauty. Just what was that like from your standpoint, and just a massive play for the Cougs?
Yeah, we broke it down to 136 yards. SportsCenter had it at 137. They were close. We were both right in the same neighborhood. Yeah, Parker Kingston is a wide receiver and a pretty good one for BYU, but track speed got him on the team. He made it to the team because of his exploits as a track star in high school. When that punt left the foot of the punter, it looked like he kind of misjudged it. That it had a lot more carry than he thought it would have. And yeah, he had to retreat to catch it. Anytime you turn your back to the punter, the question is, do you try and take a stab at it, go Willie Mays, or do you let it go and eat the fact that you're probably going to be inside your 10 or 5 yard line? Well, he chose to give it a stab and got enough of it to make it a muff. Once he touched it, he knew I better get it. And he got a really nice dribble. I mean, there was a bounce there at the end that had, the football is a prolate spheroid. It's not a ball. It's not a true round ball. It could go anywhere. And that last bounce got right into his lap. And once that happened, then the track instincts kicked in, and it was they were playing a game of tag at that point, and he was just trying to avoid as many people as possible. Then the blockers picked up, and then the return was actually set to the sideline that he went to. That was kind of helpful. BYU actually had on a safe return there. The regular defense was on the field guarding for a fake, so they didn't have the typical special teams unit out there. So that's also a cool part of it too, is that this was kind of a make it up on the fly return in a lot of ways. And once he got to the sideline, Nice selection of white shirts around him. Some nice key blocks made. Some shielding blocks were made. But it was Parker Kingston's speed that took over. And at that point, things had begun to kind of turn BYU's way in a big way. And that just kind of added to the momentum. The latest big play. The place was rocking. It was sold out, 64,000 people. And that just kind of, that was just kind of the capper, if you will, of the momentum type surge they had against K-State. And then, he just laid it all out there. You could see the sideline shot of him getting sick after the return. He just ran forever, right? And at full speed. And there were a lot of cool aspects to it. But the fact that BYU's put together special teams touchdowns in back-to-back weeks is a big part of why they're 4-0 too.
I don't know the stat, but I would love to know. And I've heard that it's a pretty high percentage that when anyone muffs a kick, that the percentages of scoring are better than if everything was clean. Because the coverage team kind of hesitates for a second. You kind of get out of your lane or you get out of your focus. That was just a remarkable play. So last year was hard. This year, the expectations based on whoever, probably I think it's fair to say we're not good. How refreshing has this been the first month of the year with what they've done?
Yeah, last year's finish was hard, because they got to 5-2 at one point. That was the team that looked like they were going to get to a bowl game in their first year in a power conference. But from 5-2, the wheels kind of came off. The Keaton Slovis injury was a part of it. The schedule toughened up. That was a big part of it. You're having to play at Texas. You had Oklahoma. You had a good TCU team at that time. You had Oklahoma State. You had Iowa State. The schedule got tough at the wrong time for that team. They were kind of getting beat up by that point, and that sixth win never came. They went from 5-2 to 5-7, finished the game on a 5-game losing streak. That 5-game losing streak may end up being a blessing in disguise. While you never want to go 5-7 and lose 5 in a row, I think it caused some changes to be made that have paid dividends for BYU, a new O-line coach, a new tight end coach, and an overall mentality of we've got to make a statement this year that we are not who people think we were based on last year. It's a proud team that makes a bowl. Bowl misses are rare. This team plays in the postseason. And so there's a lot of that going on right now. And you really do get the sense that they think that 4-0 doesn't nearly, the job's not nearly close to done at 4-0. There's a lot left to be done because they know where they were last year at 3-0 and then 5-2. So it's the next weekly statement now, and it comes at Baylor. And there are some things to actually, battle right now for BYU. BYU did this game last week, kicked at 8:35 Mountain Time, which is 9:35 K-State body clock time. All right, that was an unfamiliar thing for K-State, but a really familiar thing for BYU. They play a lot of these late night games, being in that window, and the Cougars excel at night. You go back over the last X number of seasons, last 27 games, they're 24-3 in night games, and then you flip it, and they're 2-12 in their last 14 day games. They've lost their last 10 day games against FBS opponents. Now, to be fair, one of the reasons you get into that daytime window is you get the ABC or the or the early ESP. You're playing a better team usually. When you get the afternoon call, usually playing a pretty good team. And there have been some good teams there. That said, 10 straight losses is 10 straight losses. So they're killing it at night and they're struggling in the day. So this has been an opportunity now to go into Waco and prove that you can maybe exercise a couple of those early day demons. It's a 10 a.m. Mountain Time body clock kick for BYU. So some hurdles to overcome, but an interesting kind of side trend, if you will, which was as good as they've been at night. They've had their struggles in the daytime.
Greg, they call that Dracula syndrome. That's what that.
Say the vampire.
They call them the vampire Cougs. They're the vampire Cougs right now.
Yeah. Baylor is coming off a gut-wrenching loss. Yeah. BYU is coming off an exhilarating blowout win.
Right.
How do they not overreact to the fact that Baylor is on the mat a little bit and that they are flying high?
Yeah, and then that was the theme I think coaches wanted to hit pretty early was, okay, now that we're 4-0, how do we stay hungry? How do we stay humble? And look at Baylor as not a team that's, in disarray after a heartbreaking loss, but a team that's going to redouble its efforts and play with a modicum of desperation. And I know that in speaking with BYU's OC this morning on our weekly TV show, he said they expect a great Baylor team on Saturday. He said that loss will he thinks would affect Baylor from their standpoint in a positive way, to really kind of, again, redouble those efforts and not let things go south. And so I don't think there's much of a danger if the coaches have their way of BYU looking past a 2-2 Baylor team. The Cougs have never won in Waco. They lost the game way back in 1983, but then the game they're most familiar with was the 2021 outing. And that was a game where the trenches were decidedly in Baylor's favor that day. And I think that game back in 2021 was really instructive and helpful as BYU made that transition into Big 12 play, as an example of that was a Big 12 team that showed us what it takes to win up front Big 12 football games. And so knowing they were going in 22, they beat Baylor in Provo. It was a much closer game, went to overtime. And now they're getting a sense now, second year in the Big 12, of what it does take to win power conference football games. Because last year's power conference grind took its toll on BYU. They played 10 straight power conference games, beat Arkansas and Fayetteville, then went 2-7 in their 9 Big 12 games. I think they've learned a lot from that. But I think that Baylor game back in 21 was maybe the first indicator of, okay, where do we have to get better from BYU perspective? Where do we have to get better, to be able to win games in this kind of league?
Well, yeah, and Kalani has made that comment, no question. He's told us that. Even when we've had him on, we've been fortunate to get him on quite a bit, including Hope. It looks like we'll have him on at some point this week. The home field advantage in that beautiful stadium with the atmosphere. I even saw a couple of people who follow K-State that were there. I remember when Baylor was there with that double overtime or whatever that was game that just could not stop talking enough about it. How much is that advantage?
Well, it feels like it's worth a few points these days because all of the turmoil and the tumult and the havoc and the disruption and the penalties and the turnovers from a K-State perspective, they were all happening, if you remember, on that end of the field. That's the student section end of the field. Everything was happening kind of inside the 30-yard line on Saturday night as they were backed up against the student section. They call the student section the ROC, R-O-C, Roar of Cougars. And that group was there and filled to the top row 2 hours before kick. Thousands of students filling that section. It's the loudest part of the stadium, and that's where things kind of get crazy. Whether it was Baylor in double overtime trying to score into that end zone in 2022, Arizona State that year had 4 or 5 or 6 false starts on that end of the field, or K-State kind of getting discombobulated on that end of the field. I think it's tough to argue that the atmosphere doesn't have a bit of an impact these days. The Cougs are used to playing at night. They get these late night calls. The place gets loud. There's an altitude thing to consider as well. There's how familiar are you with playing games at 8 or 9, your body clock time. BYU's used to it. Others may not be. A lot of things come together, but a Saturday night or a Friday night or a Thursday night at LaVell Edwards Stadium can be a pretty special thing. And the way the team is playing now and the way the crowds are selling out, I think it's a real thing.
Well, Greg, congratulations. Great win. Look forward to seeing you coming up Saturday. And this BYU-Baylor series has kind of turned into a pretty good one. It really has. And we'll see if BYU keeps rolling or if Baylor can bounce back from what was an atrocious and gut-wrenching loss if you're Dave Aranda and company. Thanks for your time and have a great rest of the week.
Always my pleasure. Love the Baylor-BYU series. Again, I think I've told you in the past, the first ever BYU football game I witnessed in person was against Baylor back in 1984 in Provo. 2 games then, 2 games recently. The series continues. It's 2-2. Both teams win their home games, and a lot to play for this weekend, no doubt. Thanks again.
And now in the same conference, absolutely. Yeah. Greg Wrubell with his voice of BYU athletics after their – I got to tell you, long day Saturday, the travel day Saturday, got back to watch the last few minutes of Baylor and that game and also keeping up with that one. And I don't remember what the score was, but I fell asleep and then woke up maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever time it was, and I was like, wow, they thumped them pretty good.
I didn't. I was on fumes, but I stayed up because I didn't want to do the whole I wake up and my day starts at 4 a.m. all of a sudden because my body clock's all messed up. But I did get to see a lot of that game, and I was just – this is what I interjected earlier because I didn't know if I'd get another time to say it here, but I was just gobsmacked by watching Kansas State get thoroughly dominated like that. They didn't just lose. They lost by nearly 30 points. Yeah. I mean, my God, that's just – that doesn't happen a lot, and that was an incredible win for BYU. I know you've got to just temper expectations a little bit, but this is a toss-up game, I feel like, between them and Baylor. I think they definitely have some things moving against them that Greg smartly pointed out, the game time and just the change in what they've been more accustomed to and how they've struggled in instances like this where it is a little bit of a shakeup to their routine. So that is notable, but I think if you just put these teams on a neutral site, like it's a very close football game. So you don't want to get too over your skis on what a great win that was, but it was a great win. But now you have to turn around and keep it up because you saw how you started last year, to his point, and you thought you were just going to roll into the postseason and this was going to be easy peasy and make a bowl game, and you went from 5 wins to 5 wins. Weeks and weeks and weeks later, it never changed. It was just more and more losses, and so I just love that for Kalani Sitake, like we all do, and clearly Chris Kleiman did as well, to give him the big embrace at the end of the game and tell him that, while basically, to paraphrase, it sucks losing, but I'm really happy for you, was basically the message. And so that was cool, and I'm glad that he's getting his flowers. But as we know, this is a week-to-week deal, so you've got to keep the momentum going, and we'll see if they're able to do that. But impressed so far, no doubt.
No question. And BYU, one of the fun stories so far. By the way, we're talking about a late-night kickoff. Did you see the kickoff? The 11 o'clock Mountain Time, Arizona, not this weekend, but next, hosting Tech.
Yeah, I saw a Tech fan, I don't know, it was a Tech account that I came across that was very not happy about this kickoff time.
I can imagine, 10 o'clock
I don't blame them.
Central Time.
But that's part of when you were clamoring for schools out west, this is also what you signed up for.
No,
so
you have different time zones,
the ups and the downs of having all of the time zones that you compiled over the last couple of years.
The game of the week, it all depends on who you are. I say that a couple of different times, but 2 and 4, Georgia, Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Graham Coffey covers Georgia. His thoughts on the Bulldogs, that and more. Phil Bennett today at 5. Thanks to those of you in the chat room. If you wouldn't mind, hit the like and or subscribe button if you haven't already. We appreciate your time as we continue to grow. And this is 365 Sports. TexasBeefHouse.com. Closing out the month of September, they had 3 live auctions. By the way, if you mention 365 Sports, you get $25 off your first $100 purchase if you go online. But they have another live auction coming up on October 2nd and 3rd. And then later in the month, the 23rd and 24th, as they crank these out through a partner of theirs, which is BidOnBeef.com. TexasBeefHouse.com with farm-raised Angus cattle, Wagyu beef. The next auction on the 2nd and 3rd, which is next week, will be a hamburger sale. And I have now won some product a couple of different times based on bidding just right. Jack and Paul won some hamburger patties and ground beef with an auction a couple of weeks ago or so, and you can too. You decide how much you want to pay for whatever beef you want to buy. Whether it's brisket or tri-tip, hamburger patties or ground beef, sausage or special types of steaks, Wagyu, tomahawk ribeyes, those are the big dudes that look like what the Vikings used to eat. Or if it's bone-in ribeyes or boneless ribeyes and or New York strips and even more, they have those available. Wagyu steaks, Wagyu beef from just outside of Tyler, farm-raised Wagyu beef from the cattle, the Angus cattle, from their pasture to your plate. The next auction next week on the 2nd and 3rd, or go to TexasBeefHouse.com.
At Genco, our goal is to build long-lasting relationships while providing complete financial solutions for each step of life's journey. Our members enjoy fewer fees, lower rates on loans of all types, and higher yields on a wide variety of savings options. That's just a small part of the credit union difference. Visit Genco online, on Facebook, or come by one of our 5 locations today. Apply online for membership. Genco FCU, NCUA Equal Housing Lender.
My money, my future, my credit union, Genco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
What a game coming up in Tuscaloosa on Saturday. Phenomenal game. These are the kind of games that I wish I didn't have to do anything. I could just sit down, get what I want to eat, and enjoy. Georgia at Alabama Saturday night on ABC. Graham Coffee, Dog Central, joins us on 365 Sports. Good to see you again, Graham. Hope you're doing well. Is it me? The Kentucky game was dicey. They beat the hell out of Clemson. Does it feel like Georgia is in any way flying under the radar because other teams are kind of getting some of the glitz and glamour?
It does feel that way, for sure. Yeah, it kind of feels like, will the real Georgia please stand up a little bit? I was over there this morning for press conferences, and it felt like a lot of the questions for both Kirby Smart and his players were kind of focused on like Alabama and how good Alabama is. And, Georgia's number 2 in the country. Georgia still comes into this game with, I believe, a 42 consecutive regular season winning streak now. So it's not like Georgia's bad at all. And every week that goes by that we get to see Clemson play, holding them to 3 points and 188 total yards looks more and more impressive. But that Kentucky game kind of changed the narrative, I think, nationally a little bit on Georgia for the time being. And if you're Kirby Smart, I think you probably have your team's attention right now. And you also still have the same team that you did before you went to Kentucky. So this may be the perfect spot for them psychologically.
Graham, how much of that Kentucky game had to do with maybe the latest problem that they had off the field with driving, and maybe that stuff, which they've done a really good job over the last 2 or 3 years, keeping out of the distraction pool, now maybe taking over a little bit? Because I've got to believe that the coaching staff and the administration is at a breaking point here when it comes to this continually happening.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, I'm not a weekly guest with you guys, but like I come on here, I think, fairly frequently. And I feel like every time I've been on here with you guys lately, the last 3 or 4 times, we're talking about this, and there's a new incident, right, that we're talking about. And so I don't know how it's not at least something that occupies mental energy inside the building for UGA, right? I know that Kirby Smart and his staff has kind of done everything they can think of to do in terms of yelling at these guys and bringing in education and speakers and all of that. But I will, give him credit, right? Like he suspended Daniel Harris for that Kentucky game. I don't know if he'll play against Alabama or not yet. We'll all find out on Saturday, I guess. But in the past, Georgia had not really put guys out of games for reckless driving charges and such stuff like that. It was more, if there was a more serious incident, yes, but speeding in general was not a suspension. So it seems like they've changed that, which I don't know, past kicking guys off the team, what will get the message through. So we'll see if missing playing time kind of changes how these guys look at speeding and all of that. But yeah, it is a distraction. And I think that Kentucky game, to your point, the timing of all of that news coming out really basically on, Friday morning as they were about to travel up to Lexington, I certainly don't think it helped their focus for that game.
Graham, a lot of talk about Carson Beck entering this season, and rightfully so. He's protected the football, but I also know he's not been one of those flashy quarterbacks making a ton of huge plays. What's just been your take so far through these first few games on what you've seen, what you've liked, maybe what you'd like to see more of, and so forth?
Yeah, I thought he looked really good in the second half against Clemson. I thought in the first half against Clemson, Georgia kind of struggled to pass protect. And I think the same was true against Kentucky, honestly. That first series that they had against UK, the Kentucky defensive line came out on 3rd and long and got pressure with 3. And after that, he just really didn't look comfortable for about 2.5 quarters. And they figured it out, and the offensive line figured it out. But coming into the season, we all thought that maybe the most known position group on the team for Georgia was going to be the offensive line, and we all thought they were going to be very good. They've struggled, particularly at the tackle position. I think they've struggled, and that's been a big surprise. And I think Carson Beck, you couple some of the OL issues with not having that security blanket of Brock Bowers or Ladd McConkey out there, and he looks a little rushed at times. Kentucky, I think, kind of sped him up to where there were plays that were developing for them downfield, and he was moving through his reads so quickly that he was basically getting to his check down and dropping the ball off to his check down as, Arian Smith or somebody was coming open downfield on like a deep over. So I think one of his assets is that he is a really fast processor. And I've always been really impressed with his ability to see the field. But when things aren't going well with that offensive line, I think he almost starts seeing the field a little bit too quickly and getting to some of those shorter routes maybe quicker than he should. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle that against Alabama, sort of what the bye week did for both the offensive line and just kind of him in general and getting him comfortable. But I think he's managed from a not turning the ball over standpoint. But in 2023, he was really, really good throwing the ball at the seams, and just I thought better than anybody in the country, honestly, in terms of like these kind of intermediate throws between the numbers up the hashes. And you haven't seen him target guys much up the middle of the field yet. So the question is either, is there a trust issue or a guy's not coming open in that part of the field, or is that something that Georgia's kind of been keeping tucked away in the back of the playbook that maybe comes out on Saturday night in Tuscaloosa?
What do you see differently, if at all, with what DeBoer's done at Alabama?
I think it's very different. Defensively, Kane Womack is a very different coach than kind of that Saban tree, and he's a very good coach, but they're playing a ton of man coverage on the back end, which is not to say that Alabama didn't do that at times in the past, but I think someone said today they've played 106 snaps of man coverage over, I think, the past 2 weeks, and that is a ton. So it seems like lots of various kind of pressure packages up front, and then they're just going to kind of match up on the back end and hope that they get home and that their secondary can cover. So it's different in the sense in the past. It seems like Alabama was very similar to Georgia, Kirby Saban, very similar defensively, where they would sort of force you to drive the field like 4 yards at a time, and eventually you were just going to mess something up and they would hold you to a field goal. This seems a little more kind of like boom or bust for Bama right now, where they're much more focused on, I think, creating havoc plays defensively, but also willing to accept the risk of maybe giving some up offensively. Offensive side of the ball, I think they're doing a lot of the same things because I think Milroe's the same quarterback. But Kalen DeBoer, let's be honest, I think he's a much more sophisticated offensive coach and has, kind of a brain trust around him that Bama didn't have last year with Tommy Rees. And it seems like they're getting more out of Jalen Milroe's talent through 3 weeks than what we saw Bama do for most of last season.
How is this obviously this is always going to be a big game whenever they play it, but given the fact that Alabama knocked Georgia out of the playoff last year, there's got to be at least some extra motivation for the guys who didn't get to experience that last year.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, Georgia had a chance to make history last year. Like 3 straight national titles would have been pretty much unprecedented. Alabama spoiled that. I think for Georgia, there is last season, and we heard some guys kind of mention that today, that fueled things in the offseason for them, but I think it's bigger than that too. I mean, you look for Kirby, he's I think 1-6 against Alabama as Georgia's coach. You have the national title win in 2021, but for Georgia to lose to Alabama when Nick Saban was there, I think it was kind of acceptable because who in college football didn't have a Nick Saban problem, right? Like, right. I mean, it just was what it was. I think having a Nick Saban problem and having an Alabama problem would be 2 very different things. And from a recruiting standpoint, this feels like a large game. On a lot of levels, this feels like a large game because if Georgia goes and wins against Alabama on Nick Saban Field in the first SEC game on Nick Saban Field, like there's some symbolism there that you can't really ignore when you consider the fact that Kirby spent 9 years on his staff. And so in a way, I know this is just September and there's a lot that will play out and we have a 12-team playoff now. And this is not an elimination game for anybody, but still this game, I think, feels like a lot bigger than maybe it is in terms of how it'll impact the rest of these guys' seasons because the perception here is just going to be so loud no matter which way this goes.
Yeah, isn't this a game that if they would have played, which they are, and whoever wins, which somebody will, that they might play again in the SEC championship game, and it still may not impact who plays in the playoff. But with it going to 12, does this game have it's an illustrious game, et cetera, but does it really impact, as you mentioned earlier, what they can do in the end?
I think it does. I mean, for Georgia, you've got not just Alabama, but you have to go on the road to Austin. You have to go on the road to Oxford. So, look, I think Georgia might be able to get into the playoff if they lost 2 games, but they're not going to get in and, I mean, like, you have to win some of these big games, right? And I think this is also just an identity game, it feels like, for them, especially after that Kentucky game kind of, I mean, they scored 13 points against Kentucky, right? Like, that was an ugly performance. It was a slog. So they need to go out and make a statement and sort of remind everybody, including the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, that they are the team that, won 2 of the last 3 national titles and has done all these things that they've done the last few years. So I think it's a tone setter. And from a confidence standpoint, I believe it will have an impact on how they feel going to Texas and going to Ole Miss down the road. So, yeah, I think you can see the ripple effects kind of play out for the long game.
Graham, thank you very much. Graham Coffey, Dog Central, with us when we talk to Georgia football. We get in touch with Graham. So their road games this year, the one coming up Saturday in Tuscaloosa, in Austin against number 1 Texas, and then on the road against Ole Miss, as he brought up. Right now they're in the top 10, ranked number 6. They do have Tennessee at home the following week.
Georgia got a tough schedule too, but nobody's lamenting that. Like, nobody feels bad for them because they're the juggernaut right now.
Alabama, Texas, and Ole Miss on the road.
Yeah, that's
and they're
tough.
capable of winning those games, but there's also, that's one of those that can just if you get flipped early, man.
If you gave Mizzou that same schedule, who's a really good team, but if you gave Mizzou that same schedule, people are like, man, what'd you do to Mizzou? But because Georgia's, almost had a three-peat. They were this close to getting that opportunity. Everybody's like, yeah, good.
Yeah, but they gave it to Oklahoma and Florida instead, right?
I want to push back. I don't know how good Missouri really is. I don't think they played anybody, and I don't think they've been all that impressive. They got some big stars at wide receiver in Luther Burden, and that's all well and good, but I don't know. I have not been that impressed with Missouri and what they've done to this point. So we'll see on them ultimately, but I know what you're getting at, Paul. And there's 4 legit games on this schedule that are of interest. The other ones, you're pretty much feeling like this is going to be a cakewalk, but then that Kentucky game happens and you're wondering whether that's the case or not. But, Alabama this weekend. I don't think you're really all that worried about Auburn or Mississippi State. Texas in Austin will be a huge game. Florida stinks right now. But, Ole Miss on the road, number 5 Tennessee at home. And then UMass and Georgia Tech, that late season SEC, man, that is such
tuck it underneath
bull,
the pillow,
and you don't play as many conference games, and it's like, I just think that's –
yeah.
But anyways, so, they've got 4 huge showdowns on paper right now that are still upcoming, not to mention a sprinkling of, who knows if Auburn has a really good day and Georgia doesn't, and that becomes interesting. But they're going to be tested, and yet they're probably going to be favored in pretty much all of those games, you would think.
What a schedule, and Georgia – will open up that of those 4 games in Tuscaloosa coming up Saturday night, 6:30 on ABC. Coming up next, Phil Bennett. So many years coaching college football. We will ask him about Phil Snow because we did to Phil Snow last week. Also, the thoughts about the Hail Mary, how that was defended.
Hail Marys.
Hail Marys. Paul, what's the saying in
Hail Mary?
Hail Mary, full of grace or whatever.
Yeah, Hail Mary, full of grace.
Also, just some thoughts about what he saw over the weekend. Utah bludgeoning Oklahoma State, BYU, what they've done to K-State, and a lot more. And this is 365 Sports. I do this all the time. I have so many. I got it right here. Thank you very much, Garrett. Appreciate you for that. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco, and, of course, the month of September winding down. But they still have the Jeep Adventure Days going on, including the 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland with $13,000 off, 2024 Jeep Gladiator Sport, 18%. That's a big number off MSRP. How about the new Compass, the Jeep Compass for $9,000 off? And the Wagoneer L, that's what we drove around when we landed in Omaha and drove the Lincoln, $8,300 in dealer discount, plus different models that have 0% financing available as they continue the Jeep Adventure Days at Allen Samuels. Also, 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Hybrid, save $12,000. And you may even qualify for $7,500 in federal tax credit. Ask them when you are there. And $500 extra off for anybody who is a first responder. Allen Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. As they close out the month, there's a week to go, and they have cars in the lot, a bunch of them, usually well over 400, pre-owned and used. Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Get ready, Baylor fans. The ultimate game weekend experience awaits you at the Baylor Club. Kick off your weekend with our Friday Night Live pep rally. With live entertainment and special appearances from the Baylor Spirit Squad, it's the perfect way to start your game weekend with a roar. On Saturdays, don't miss our Knox Hall tailgate. Enjoy delicious food, ice-cold drinks, and great company as you gear up for the big game. And after the weekend's excitement, wrap it all up with our famous Bear brunches on Sundays. Don't wait. Make your game weekends legendary with the Baylor Club membership today.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
And on Mondays in the 5 o'clock hour, our favorite Phil Bennett, longtime college football coach, on that gorgeous, how many acres did you say? A couple of acres behind your house?
Yeah, just a couple.
Just a couple.
That's all I can handle.
Well, that's a nice handful, and of course the beautiful backyard, the cooking and all that, the outdoor kitchen. So, Phil, Baylor with a gut-wrenching kick in the nuts loss. Otherwise, I thought they really been a nice win, but they cannot stop those last 2 plays. Should have lost or should have had the game gone into overtime with the first throw that bounced off the chest. What did they do wrong?
Well, the first thing is where the ball was on the hash. The ball was on the offensive right hash. The field was to their left, which is good because, what you're trying to do when you're a Hail Mary, you're trying to get a play that will extend where you could get receivers 50 yards downfield. I thought what Baylor was trying to do was a smart thing. I always did it. I always would bring 5 or try to bring a balanced rush and don't extend the play. What happens is Baylor ended up blitzing from the boundary. They had 3 linemen sorted to the boundary, 2 outside guys, and the outside guy to the field came underneath.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave Shedeur, it was an 8-second play. You can't, if you remember Auburn last year against Alabama, they rushed 2. You can't let people have extended time where the receivers can get downfield. I don't feel like, and I'm not trying to say Dave didn't know what he was doing, but everybody calls that victory. You try to get your people defend the field, and even if it feels to the left, they're not going to sprint out to the boundary because it's too short. He didn't protect the field. The other thing, I don't know who number 24 is, but my 3 safeties that I put deep on victory, I put them at the goal line. Mm-hmm. And I told them, you don't cross the goal line unless somebody carries you across the goal line. You defend that goal line. Number 24 was in the middle, almost off the field. He could have helped that corner who was man-to-man on number 1. He never looked at any receiver except number 1 to the field. You can watch it 10 times and you'll see the same thing. So I think just the strategy of I have to believe that they didn't execute the call, and then having the guy that deep in the end zone is worthless. You might as well not even be there.
Well, he actually said in the postgame, now, and he didn't try to throw anybody into the bus, but the right defensive end or on the edge was supposed to not allow the edge to be broken.
I knew it had to be a bust.
Yeah.
But even with that, the linebacker, you've got to make the D-line right. The linebacker ran right up his ass instead of climbing. And the other thing, I would be a little bit, when you have a wide field, Hail Mary, and it truly, I didn't think it the first time I saw it, but it was a sprint out. They had the back to the field, and the back blocked, really didn't have to block anybody because both the end and the linebacker, who was outside rusher, came underneath. And you can watch it way too much time. And then I want you to watch, I don't know who 24 is, but he's almost out of the end zone before the ball's thrown.
Yeah,
I don't know why you would ever put a guy in the middle of the end zone.
Yeah, I agree on that part. No question.
Phil, are these easier games to pick your team emotionally up after, or is this one where you're a little bit concerned because it is such a punch in the gut?
Paul, I thought that Baylor outplayed them, and I thought they went up there. They were prepared to play on both sides of the ball. They gave up some passing yards, but Colorado could not run the ball. Sawyer, our quarterback, kept. He made enough plays. This is a punch. I mean, it's going to, not that they can't, but this is going to hurt. This is a game that you had in control. And then I will tell you this. I mean, the fumble going out of the end zone, it was a good call. Jake had a good call going, and that should have been a touchdown. But it's going to be a while before they get over this.
Do you have any, I don't want to bring up any bad memories, but any Hail Mary stories of your own or anything similar that you can point to, and kind of how you rebounded from it afterwards, or how long it took you to kind of get yourself back together?
Craig, the game, it wasn't a Hail Mary, but a game that I thought we were better than and should have won was our Michigan State Cotton Bowl. I mean, it took me a damn year to get over that. And you got to be, you've got to be critical of yourself and offensive and us, because we mismanaged the game. We didn't run the ball. We had an onside kick. I mean, they needed 10 things to happen. They're down 20 points. We pretty much dominated the game. And then they convert a 4th and 7 off of, they had no timeouts after one of our players goes down, and they stop the clock and end up changing personnel on us. So yeah, I've had it happen. Not on the last play of the game though, but, and I'm not saying that, like I said, I thought they had the right idea. I knew something happened to the field. The end, somebody had to be protecting upfield. Now, like I said, they knew. Everybody got on and said, well, he rushed 5. That's stupid. That's not stupid. I mean, I'd rather rush 5 than rush 3 or rush 2 and give him forever. I believe if they would have executed it right, the ball would have never got off.
Yeah, and even then, I believe there was a defender, a defensive lineman. It was right, like, how close that is. Yeah.
He was the backside in.
Yep.
If we would have had any front side pressure, it would have been a sack.
All right, so BYU's coming to town, and I want to bring them up because they're playing really good defense with Kalani Sitake and what they've done. They had different ways of scoring, and they just mauled Kansas State. I mean, that thing was ugly and shocking to me how one-sided. Even the fact BYU won the game, but so one-sided. Your thoughts about what they're doing at BYU?
Did you watch the game?
I only got to watch part of it because we had a late travel day. Yeah.
It was a 6-6 game, and the dangest punt return I've ever seen. K-State thinks the guy's not going to return the ball. Looked like a little slow white guy, and they're sort of pulling off. They go to stop. He grabs the ball in the right hash and goes like 80 yards for a touchdown. And I'm telling you, from that moment on, the game changed. K-State couldn't get out of its way. I have played 3 times in Provo, and I'm telling you, it's like the witch hour. I mean, they say, Mormons are quiet. They don't drink. They're the damnedest fans you've ever seen. I mean, for people not drinking, they have a hell of a time.
Yeah, they'll be here in force too, Phil.
Yeah, and it's an atmosphere that is, I mean, they get behind, especially when things start going good. I still don't think they have a great offense. I think that if Baylor sort of plays like they did last week, and I think that I think it can be a very competitive game.
What did you think of TCU and SMU? SMU blew their doors off. TCU has problems on defense right now.
You know, I think our boy over at Midway could be laughing a little bit. You know,
yeah, Joe Gillespie was fired, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, it's easy to blame. And of course, that's the way the business is. When you pay the money that you're paying coaches, you know, I really thought that you know, once again, you know, offensively, I usually think somebody who has the best quarterback usually wins. Just turned the ball over too much, didn't protect the football, could not tackle defensively, and big plays. I mean, 25-yard touchdown runs. I think they definitely. You asked earlier about recovering from a game. I think they really had some problems recovering from that UCF game, and I'm not sure it's going to get better for them.
Coach, your thoughts on the Oklahoma situation? The loss to Tennessee, defense played really well. I mean, that's been a bright spot for them, but the change at quarterback late, looks like it's going to be Michael Hawkins moving forward. Is that the move that Brent Venables had to make in your mind? And just your thoughts on kind of seeing them stacked up with some of the SEC's best?
You know, the game early on, there were plays to be made at quarterback. And Jackson, for whatever reason, doesn't have the confidence or is not in the groove to make them. There was a couple of throws that could have been, that could have been a heck of a game. I'm not ready to jump on Tennessee's bandwagon because I don't think they've really played anybody great. And with just a few plays, Oklahoma could have been a barn burner. I think without question that there's got to be Hawkins will be in the play, but also they've got to run the ball better. They've got to be able to run the ball and take some pressure off their quarterback. They're okay on defense, but far from dominant. And it's going to be interesting. You know, they have some games. Everyone talks about the power of the SEC, and I'm going to tell you, you can look at it right now. There's some good teams, just like last year. Good teams, but there's a lot of teams that each week can win games. I'm not so sure there's a Georgia or an Alabama or Texas that can dominate that league. I think it'll be a lot like the Big 12.
Georgia, Alabama, Saturday night, 6:30 in Tuscaloosa on ABC. Part of the again, there's certain games that just seem like you can't wait to watch them.
I think that this game, especially with Alabama having a new coach, I'm impressed with him. I know him a little bit, but he seems to be very comfortable in his own skin. I don't think the history and tradition of Nick Saban has bothered him at all. You know, he made a statement one time. He said, I think I'm pretty much the same guy that I was at Sioux City as then I went to Fresno, and he said, I just feel like that the process that I've been involved in and what we do, it works. And I watched him play, and I would say that right now he's got his quarterback playing very well, and Milroe is the guy that if he's ginning, they're pretty good. And you look at Kirby on the other side. The last game I happened to watch the whole Kentucky game, and they very easily could have went down. I still think they're well coached. I think the quarterback, they don't have the rush game that they had the year before to help the quarterback, but it should be a really good game.
Phil Bennett with us on Mondays in the 5 o'clock hour here on 365 Sports.
Phil, Oklahoma State can't run the ball all of a sudden. They got one of the best dudes in the country. They can't stop the run either. It feels like if your name's Cowboys, whether it's Oklahoma State or Dallas, you've got that problem this year. But for the Pokes, this isn't good going against a Kansas State team that's also just stubbed their toe as well.
Both teams, Paul, they need a win bad. And I look at Oklahoma State, and I know they can't run the ball, but them stopping the run, it's the worst during I've seen in my tenure. They are just not fundamentally sound on defense in the run game. A lot of people were very, they thought that Rising was going to play at quarterback. He didn't. And Utah went in there knowing, for us to win this game, our quarterback, we've got to help him. And they did. They were able to run, but they weren't, Oklahoma State could never get them in second long, third and long, lot of short yardage situations, and that hurt them, and it cost them the game. And if you look at time of possession, it was something. And you're right. Right now, their back is not the guy he was a year ago.
Coach, not sure if you got to lay eyes on it, especially there at the end, but if you did, Michigan getting the big stop there at the end against USC. I mean, they have problems, obviously, on offense they're still trying to figure out, but that defense is good enough to win them a big game on Saturday.
I think that they showed a lot, especially starting a new quarterback. I made a prediction after the Texas game. You might see Michigan lose 4 or 5 games. I didn't buy in. I didn't think we're going to see over time that LSU and USC are top 10 teams. I think LSU is a team that's fixing to hit the skids. They're not as good as advertised. I think USC is still very soft. Once again, there's a lot of teams out there that are really struggling to stop the run. And Michigan went in the game, and it was a Jim Harbaugh game. I mean, Sharon sat there and said, hey, if we're going to win it, we've got to run the ball. What did they throw for? 40 yards?
Yeah.
I mean, that's unheard of.
Yeah, I enjoyed that game, and USC has, they have tightened it up. What are they doing, do you think, with the new coordinator and what they're doing on defense?
He's a young, smart guy. I think that college is different. One of the things I noticed, I watched the half of the game. I watched the second half. Michigan was creating gaps with moving the tight end. They played 12 personnel, and USC didn't understand that. They were getting a +1 a bunch of times. And, the other thing that these pro guys that come to college don't understand is they don't understand the hash marks, where, what FIB is, formation in the boundary. And it affected that game. They outnumbered them and had a real nice run scheme against them.
You mentioned some of the games that you still maybe lose sleep over. I'm not saying now. There was a game in 2070.
I still do.
Okay. All right. And I get that because, you had some big wins along the way throughout your career. How close in that game at Kansas State, RG3's Heisman year, when you guys started 3-0, he threw the pick at the end of the game. How much does that game bite you in any way?
Oh, it was that was very much like the game Saturday. We pretty much dominated the game, and we just didn't finish. We had chances to finish, and I don't know if you remember this, Smoak, but the little running back up there, I think his name was Hebert, or he was from Waco.
Yeah, John Hubert. John Hubert.
Good little player.
Mm-hmm.
But I've told people this. I don't know if you saw the YouTube tribute that BYU did of Coach Snyder, but that this guy asked me, he said, what would you say separated Bill Snyder from any coach you've been around? And I say this, I've always told you guys this, is details. And in that game, the details of the game, I don't know if you remember it, but they ran a punt back on. I mean, Paul had brought it up that set up a touchdown that actually got them right back in the game. We were about to separate from them.
They always, not every week, but there was always either a punt return, and you had some dynamic punt returners that were historic, but it was always something that they still do to this day. We saw, we could talk about the Hail Marys. We could talk about, like, Matt Rule in Nebraska had a chance to maybe close out Illinois, missed a field goal. Baylor missed a field goal. And then everyone wants to talk about the ensuing drama when sometimes you could end that opportunity or that happening, kick a field goal.
Yeah. No one talks about that, but, Baylor for sure. What was that, a 37-yard field goal?
Yep, and he had been pretty good up until that point, yeah.
It's and then, of course, Nebraska. You think that, you're there. You're thinking, hey, you know what? This is going to be a hard fought, big win for Coach Rule. And, you just don't ever know. That's why you got to play every play. Every play matters. The details matter.
No doubt. And it was an incredible experience going up to Lincoln for the very first time. I was curious from your perspective, just where Lincoln kind of sits in your memories and your experiences and just your thoughts on, I mean, it's, I don't know if it's one of a kind, but it was very unique for me to see just the passion that they have for Nebraska football up close and personal and be in the actual sea of red. So your thoughts from having seen it from all the different perspectives over the years.
I told your dad that when I was at Kansas State, the first year, they're only like 70 miles apart. And I'd played them when I was at Iowa State. I was a defensive coordinator, and we came very close to upsetting them when Coach Osborne was there a couple of times. They beat us actually on a punt return in Ames, Iowa, like I believe it was 85 or 86. Well, we go in there, Craig, I believe it was my first year. It was 99. And their quarterback the next year won the Heisman.
Crouch.
Travis. His name is
Eric Crouch.
Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, it was as good an atmosphere. And I remember looking, I said, wow. I said, I'd forgot at Iowa State the atmosphere. Of course, this was for a championship. If they won, they won it. If we won, we won it. And they beat us. And then one of my best games, funny thing, K-State is known for great crowds, great loyalty, great support. The next year, we're playing for the championship again. And Crouch had won the Heisman, and they are really good. They have a tailback that is special, a great receiver, a great tight end. And before the week of the game, what I remember is they said, whatever you do, don't sell your tickets to a Nebraska person. And Bill Snyder told me, he said, Phil, this whole stadium could be red tomorrow. He said, we take great pride, and said this whole stadium could be red. And that's what kind of fan support they have.
Yeah.
You were not at Baylor when Nebraska played them last, I believe, right?
No.
Before they left the conference. Yeah.
Phil got here in 11.
Yeah. Well, the last time they played at Floyd Casey Stadium, I was dumbfounded because as you drove up Valley Mills, there were signs, Nebraska fans pulling here to Nebraska fans, and the entire visitor side of the stadium was red.
Yeah.
Absolutely red.
People wondered why Matt Rule would take that job. The people that have grown up in this business and seen it were not surprised. I mean,
the commitment is crazy.
It is a place. It's one of those places. And I'd be interested to ask you, Smokey, didn't you think it was an unbelievable atmosphere?
I've been to bowl games. I've been to the various games. I've seen the crowd, but it was crazy. Craig was there for the first time. I was there for the first time. And it's everything you heard or hear about, but then when you see it firsthand, it absolutely makes you gives you chill bumps. It really does.
It's an atmosphere. It's one of them that you remember.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate they lost, but what the heck, it did not ruin the experience of us being there. Phil Snow, last thing, and then you go cook that tenderloin. Phil Snow was in studio with us. I told you that last week. We are going to set you up, the two of you, to do a podcast. I think you may have talked to him, but he and you two and your storytelling, it would be legendary. It will be legendary for us to get you guys together.
Well, I know this. In this business, and I'm not sure, Phil, but a guy sent me something one time. I was one of 6 or 7, and he might be in it, that coached college football 6 decades.
Oh,
and
wow.
What I sort of feel like myself, he's a throwback.
Mm-hmm.
He remembers when. And I've admired him forever. Back in the days when before Arizona State is what it is now, he had them playing, going to the Rose Bowl. He is everywhere he's been a football coach. And I think I told you that when I left Baylor. I tell people this all the time. Matt Rule loves to tell people, I wouldn't hire him as a GA at SMU. He was at UCLA, and I started laughing. I told him, I guess I don't need to interview with you, do I? not that I was going to stay, but, I just knew they were good guys. And, he had great success with Phil. He's a true, he does it the right way. He studies the game. He understands the game. He coaches hard, but he lets everybody enjoy it. And, that would be fun. It sure would.
Okay. I'm going to workshop a couple names for you. You tell me which one you like better. Do you like Get Your Fill or the Fill Up?
I think I like the Fill Up better.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. 6 decades for you, and back in the 70s, all the way through, even recently in the 20s, you guys have been coaching for 6 damn decades. That's unbelievable.
What a blessing. And, it's like we talk about these situations. It's hard for me to be critical of coaches because all of them work so darn hard. But, it's just the way it is sometimes. You have to be objective. And one of the things I want to tell you is I try to be objective. I'm not saying that because Lord knows if it's happened, I've probably done it. So we'll see.
Well, you have, and we enjoy it, and it's great. Enjoy that beautiful backyard, those 2 acres, and also just enjoying life after 6 decades in the coaching profession. We enjoy the segment. Phil Bennett with us every Monday in the 5 o'clock hour with storytelling and his opinion. And so he said that what Baylor did based on the fact that the 5-man front was not bad. It was not a problem to do it. The right end or right edge, can't let what happened happen. He did. Aranda brought that up, opened up the opportunity for Shedeur to get kind of lined up and throw the BB in the end zone.
Yeah, and I had somebody in my mentions, a guy he always appears when things are going bad. He's one of those people, and tried to make a swipe about, us not coming on here today and, like, demanding Dave Aranda be fired. And it's like, well, if somebody makes a field goal, then we're talking about what a great win that was. Yeah. If you don't fumble at the goal line, we're talking about what a great win that was. If you actually aren't standing in the back of the end zone on a Hail Mary attempt, which nobody can explain why that was happening, you win a big game. I mean, there were so many things that were just execution and not being ready for the moment, while Travis Hunter was very much ready for the moment. Shedeur Sanders was ready for the moment. Their guys were ready for the moment. I'm not trying to lay it all on the players because there were definitely things like Garmin Randolph getting hurt in that game affected that game. That's part of why you had confusion, was because you had somebody who probably wasn't playing in that situation who was now suddenly playing. But that is on coaching, that guy needs to be ready and know what he's doing. But Randy even mentioned they drew up the whiteboard, the blitzes, and they still got him wrong right before that play. So, I understand if you want to see a change. I understand if you're not a Dave Aranda fan, like because he's not winning enough or his style's not what you want. I totally get all of that, but this is a game where it's on the players too, and I do feel like if you want to throw blame at the coaches, that's deserved, but you also have to make the plays, and if you don't make the plays, you're going to lose games, especially close games, and I feel like special teams had a chance to make one more play.
Yep.
Defense had a chance to make one more play.
Yep.
Offense had a chance to make one more play, and none of them made one, and they didn't need all 3 of them to make one more play. They just needed one of them to make one more play, and they could not do it, and that's why they lost that football game. Not because they weren't motivated enough. They had a great approach to that game.
I thought the game plan was not perfect, but I thought it was what gave them a chance to win the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they were in position, as you said.
They did everything.
Everyone's mad at him right now. Everyone fire him, whatever.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that's how it goes. But I did want to add on, not only that part of it, but just like, players have to make plays, and that's just sort of where I am on it. And I think that's a game where you should have confidence. You can beat BYU. You are good enough to win every game remaining on your schedule. You're also bad enough to lose every game on your schedule because this is the Big 12, and that's just going to be the case for everybody every single week, except for maybe Utah, which is hell for all of us non-Utah folks to have to deal with potentially. But, man, I just think that's a game that you're going to have to find a way to rebound from, or you're going to let that become 2 losses, 3 losses, 4 losses, and then you will get what you want in the end, but it's going to be a miserable next 8 weeks, 8+ weeks. And I don't think they're that kind of a team. I think they're good enough to still be in the postseason. I think they're good enough to go win a fair share of games. But, man, if you cannot execute in crunch time, then you're just not going to be able to live up to your goals and accomplish your dreams the way that you'd otherwise be able to.
Yeah, doing the post-game show last year, and Smokey, have you had to do one after a loss yet? No, because you're road. So you know this from doing it, but like last year doing the post-game show, Garrett and I got a lot of, especially towards the end, why aren't you guys demanding for David Rand like that to be fired? First of all, we have no, demand someone be fired?
I don't know who you think I am.
Yeah,
but.
I know. So
there's a lot of media members who think if they demand someone to get fired, that it puts pressure on the administration. They're not listening to us.
Look, here's the thing. I could suggest that maybe teams need a new look, or it's best time. It's my opinion.
Change coordinators,
or do like I can say those things in my opinion. But if I came on here and said I demand that X coach be fired from this university, they'd be like, "Oh, good for you." I mean, I'm glad you have demands.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
no one cares what you think.
If they go get beat up by BYU and they lose the game after the game, then maybe we're going to have that conversation. But they're 2-2. Mm-hmm. I predicted they'd be 2-2 at this point. Mm-hmm. I always thought the Colorado game was a loss. I always thought the Utah game was a loss. I thought they were good enough to beat Colorado, and they were, just not, one more play good enough. But they could have, should have, would have won that game. They found a way to lose it, basically, is what they did. But I'm not in a mood at 2-2 to start demanding jobs and things like that. I mean, you're just not going to get that. If that's what you want, there's a lot of young hot take artists that probably don't know any better that'll casually just do that, or not even young, old, whatever. But that's not going to be here until it's deserved. And I don't think it's deserved right now. And I know it's different from a fan perspective, from a media perspective. Look, we've seen coaching changes. We're not going to well, Dave's our buddy, and it's not like that. We just want to see good football, and I feel like they're just teetering on that point where you don't quite have, you know what I'm saying? It's a weird spot that they're in right now, and right now after that loss is not the time to go, he can't win and this is not going to work, because I don't think that was all on him on Saturday. But enough of those games happen, then it is on him ultimately, because he prepares his football team, and they have a very bad string of big missed opportunities that have started to stack up, and it is becoming a big albatross on the overall Dave Aranda conversation.
Yeah, TCU and
got to go win a big game, and I think this weekend's a big game. Welcoming the BYU team that's undefeated. I have two things that I must get to.
Okay.
Runzas are really good, or a runza is really good.
Oh, yeah. Is that beef or what is it?
It is. I called it like a Nebraska hot pocket, basically.
Yeah,
I don't know. That might be like some taboo term. I probably don't need to. Nebraska hot pocket, but it is a yeast dough bread pocket filled with ground beef, cabbage, sauerkraut, onions, and unidentified seasonings. And you get it, and it's like a thin outer layer, but it's like a very nice hot pocket, really. Yeah. And it is piping freaking hot when you get it. Like,
it is.
Wait a second. But it is delicious.
If I'd have known there was sauerkraut in it, I wouldn't have eaten it. But it was
well.
Good.
That's why I was eating it, and I probably wouldn't have eaten it either if I'd have known that. But I eat it, and I'm like, this tastes a little weirder than what I would get, but it was great.
Here's the rule I have on food you don't know. Don't ask about the ingredients until you taste it and you either like it or not. Yeah. Because there's sometimes you would hear an ingredient in a food and you'd be like, well, I don't want that at all. And then you eat and you like it, you don't taste it the same way, or it's cooked in a different way. I learned that from my dad the first time when I was young in Louisiana. And I would say, Dad, what's in this? And he's like, I don't know, just eat it. It's good. Yeah. Because in lots of parts of Louisiana, you don't know.
So that was one of those things that I wanted to make sure we checked off. That was like the Nebraska experience. So in the stands, we all got a runza. Mm-hmm. We also got to be a part of a really cool flip card show that was commemorating their 400 straight sellout. So that was pretty their game day is pretty badass. Just all the stuff they do, they make it really cool and a really fun experience. And I can't believe they let that game slip through. But we didn't get to see Matt Rule talk to him, but we got to see Sean Padden, which was really cool. And
Ed Foley,
Dave Foley.
Ed Foley.
Yeah, Dave Foley's the
kids in the
hall. He's cool though. But yeah, that was part of it. Was eating a runza, and just it was a cool deal, and definitely a bucket list thing checked off. The other thing I wanted to mention is a more breaking realignment news, and that is the fact that Pete Thamel is reporting that UNLV, hot target for the Pac, right? The Las Vegas market they've been bandied about for the Big 12 and this and that. We got our buddy Phil. UNLV has agreed to commit to the Mountain West for future membership. And obviously they were in those PAC talks, and the Mountain West is looking at, potentially getting picked apart throughout this whole ordeal. Apparently San Jose State also committing to the league. So what a wild day for the PAC.
You're going to
Mountain West.
Yeah. No, it's been a bad day for the PAC
American and everybody.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Utah State now, according to Chris Vanini, is the next team that's been offered a Pac-12 invite. But this has been a tough day, a great day for what they've done with the American, and a really comeback day for the Mountain West with Gloria Navarez and what she's done to be able to keep some of those originals in the conference.
Yeah, so you got to wonder, what's next? UTEP, New Mexico State.
Zaga basketball, I still feel like that's out there and probably happens.
Yeah.
But, I
don't see any reason why they should say no to that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the basketball that they play will be better in that conference with those other teams than what it is in their conference right now. I think that's the thing that undoes Gonzaga when they get to the tournament, is that they've had this run of not being challenged very much, and then they play teams like when they lost to Baylor or when they lost to North Carolina that wake up and eat challenge for breakfast, and then they get there and these teams that have had a rough game the game before but won, like Gonzaga versus UCLA, they had this scare. I don't know if they ever recovered from that, and Baylor was just able to feast on them in that championship game.
They wanted
it'll make them better.
They're at 6 right now, so they need 2 more for football, right? So if Utah State were to accept, then you need 1 more. Gonzaga basketball.
Let's be honest, though. This is not what their plan was.
No, and it's not a power conference, and it's not anywhere close to that. And when they had the war chest and all of the things in place, they got off to a good start at the end of last week. Getting Boise State and the whole crew was a nice start. But, yeah, I don't think the idea was that everybody else in the immediate, the Memphises and the UTSAs and the Tulanes and all these schools were going to remain where they are. And it makes you wonder, what are those offers that are being offered that all of those teams have decided to stay put? But, Air Force out of the mix now, UNLV out of the mix now. So that leaves you just so many few options, and so I think you're going to see a smaller conference.
There was a comment, yeah, you're right, and it looked good, and you even saw Oregon State, Washington State fans very proud, saying, hey, the Big 12 made a mistake by not bringing us in. Well, now they're kind of in limbo again. One of the reports, and I don't know if it was Chris Vanini or who it was, but one of the things that was said after seeing presentations from the Pac-12, those 4 schools in the AAC have reaffirmed their commitment. We know that. One of the things that was mentioned was the AAC schools mentioned outstanding linear and direct-to-consumer national media partners in the statement. And as he wrote last week, ESPN's deal with AAC was best leverage, security, and good G5 money. The Pac-12 could only pitch hypotheticals.
Yeah, you got to feel.
Which is what got him in trouble in the first place with the hypotheticals, or we're going to be okay.
You got to feel like that's the short-term, most responsible thing to do rather than just going and, we'll fill in that very important TV blank in the future and that money blank in the future, because really all you're trading it for is a name. Mm-hmm. And that's it, and nothing else that's really that you would want to accompany that name in terms of playoff access or things like that. So I know on the surface you'd want your team to go be in the Pac-12, but it sounds like they're all slow playing and being smart about it, and obviously there's going to be more details to come. But yeah, so now Utah State, and I guess Gonzaga will remain in talks as well, and we'll see where else they turn. But what a turn of events, certainly today with the various, pledges from the Mountain West schools and American schools that are all going to be staying put. So this is very, very interesting. But we'll see what Utah State decides to do, and I'm sure we won't have to wait long. And we'll see what Phil has to say on UNLV staying put, and they got this opportunity.
Well, Pete Thamel is now reporting that Utah State is expected to say yes.
Okay,
right.
Well, there you go.
Washington State, Oregon State spent a year claiming to be the victims of big business in college sports, just to turn around and build a league that does the exact same thing, cut out a couple of low-value Mountain West programs to squeeze a few extra dollars for themselves. That's from Kevin Sweeney, who covers mainly college basketball, but also works for SI now. All right, Paul Catalina in the top 5. I have to do this because Paul has had a tough football season. Very difficult. and had the Red Hot Cal Bears chirping throughout the week. This is from David Hale, who covers the ACC. I just like to tell the great folks at Cal Twitter that taking or talking blank for a week straight, then losing a game in which you were clearly the better team in agonizing fashion is actually the most ACC thing you can do. Welcome to the club. Your membership card entitles you to 10% off.
Now, I love this, and I respect the algorithm, and believe me, I was thrilled that FSU won also to kind of stick it to the algorithm a little bit. I would not say outplayed in every way. That's my I would push back on that. There were some positive things, but yes, Cal had that game won a couple times and failed to do so. By the way, just got a note from my Gonzaga source, and this is from the Spokesman Review there in Spokane. The Zags is not accurate reporting that they are leaving for the Pac-12.
That came from the commissioner, didn't it?
That came from the president.
Yeah, the president of Gonzaga.
Right now, at least. So we'll see where that goes.
Gary Ross, do you have your headsets on, a microphone?
Yep.
I sent this over the weekend, and this has gotten to be a little bit of interest. LSU linebacker Harold Perkins, Matt Zenitz, who does an incredible job covering college football, reported that he was out for the rest of the year due to a knee injury. And his mother has taken to Twitter and very upset about being a HIPAA law violation, asking him to delete that. It's out there. Harold Perkins, who was spectacular his freshman year. Then last year, Garrett, it just seemed like, I don't know, a scheme where he was playing. I don't know, but this guy I thought was going to be as good as anybody coming out after when he could go to the NFL.
It's not a HIPAA violation, by the way, but
yeah.
Well, so
yeah. Okay, Garrett.
I mean, it's really unfortunate. I told Paul earlier it's different circumstances, but this reminds me a lot of the end of Tyrann Mathieu there, where you had to kick him off the team and you got to see glimpses of what it really could have been, but you never got to see the full thing play out. And unfortunately for Harold Perkins, like you mentioned, you had the breakout freshman year. You've had the potential. You've had so many changes, and it's just never really kind of been able to find his feet in this defense. And then you have an injury like this, and unfortunately, this could be the end of it, and you hate to see that. But, I watched the game. I saw him get banged up. They definitely are going to have to need Braden Swinson to step up with Perk out. But 3 season-ending injuries for LSU, and it's kind of unfortunate, but this season's going to get off the rails.
Yeah, that's a dynamic player who is not able to play and looks like he is done for the rest of the year.
It's really tough. I'm trying to see how that might affect his draft stock. You'd think that injury probably leads you to head to the NFL draft this spring. I mean, you're a junior, so you're eligible.
And because of the timing of the injury, will he be able to play next fall?
Well, he might as well go to the draft.
Yeah, I would think that he's going to
Yeah.
probably test those waters, because why come back to LSU unless it's like, there's some reason or another to come back and maybe, I don't know. It just seems like odds are, health-wise, especially after something like that, you'd probably head off to the NFL, but I guess we'll see. And, I think, who was it, his family member? Was that his mother?
His mother.
She got community noted. She got community noted on Twitter, which I think Twitter is an absolute dumpster fire, but it's entertaining. And amidst all that entertainment and the dumpster fire and just the whole mix mash of it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly, one of the better things on that website is the community notes. I absolutely love those. And when they actually fact check people, especially things that are getting high profile attention that are wrong. And I don't love that for her in this situation, but it was valuable to see the community note of like, no, actually, everybody learned a lesson here that college players and NFL players are not protected by HIPAA laws, so there's absolutely nothing being violated by, a national reporter putting that news out there. It's unfortunate, though, and that sucks, so good luck to him and his family moving forward.
The best weekend win was what I think was James Madison's 70, North Carolina 50. Mac Brown was very emotional, as you could imagine, after the game, even thought about the possibility of walking away. Read the story by Adam Smith, 247, but everything seems to have calmed down. But that was stunning, watching what James Madison was able to do to the Tar Heels in that game. All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina and his top 5. IdealMRI.com. I have tomorrow an injection in my lower back, and it's because I finally was able to get the MRI and all the results back from my doctor and also from Ideal MRI. And, there's all sorts of things going on in my lower back as I've gotten older, And it's just one of those things. I promise I'll never have anybody cut on it because I've been told you don't do that, but it's just enough to where it's annoying. So tomorrow I get another injection, and hopefully everything will work out just fine. The ideal MRI images went to Dr. Ackley, and then he recommended what I do next. And, of course, I'm on Medicare, so my ideal MRI normally no more than $497 or less. For me, it was nothing because of where I am with it comes to Medicare, et cetera, and benefits that I have. But it's $497 or less every single time, and the average MRI is $1,100. I'm telling you, they do a great job. State-of-the-art imaging machine, great tech specialists, those who say hi to you when you walk in the door, those who call you to get your MRI set up, and, of course, Dr. Rob Maxey and his partners. Ideal MRI, located in the Central Texas Marketplace off I-35 in Waco.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
For Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Use promo code 365sports when you go to Texas Beef House or bidonbeef.com at the next auction. And believe me, you'll love winning these auctions. So much fun, and you get so much stuff, and you get a really good price on it as well. Week 4 awards this week. This might be something we do week to week. Just thought we'd have a little fun with this. Number 5, the Definitely Being Tampered With Award. John Mateer at Wazoo. Holy cow, this guy is good. Dual threat, fantastic with his feet, doing it through the air as well. There is no way that 20 different football teams with crap quarterbacks have called John Mateer about what he plans to do with the rest of his football life. I promise you, he is being tampered with right now. He's a Texas kid playing at Wazoo. Looks fantastic. Was fantastic the other night. Just a one-man wrecking crew on an offense. He's got some maybe Johnny Manziel type vibes. Like, he's just really, really good. And when you lose a Cam Ward at Washington State, you could be like Jake, you'd be like other schools and lament it, but Jake Dickert didn't mind because he knew he had John Mateer right behind him and was ready to go. Definitely being tampered with. John Mateer. Number 4, the Don't Stop Believin' Award goes to Luke Altmaier. Luke Altmaier's career got off to an auspicious start when he was at Ole Miss. Matt Corral gets hurt in the Sugar Bowl, and Baylor mauled him. Just absolutely mauled him, sacked him a bunch of times. It was not the best night of his life in New Orleans for Luke Altmaier. Then last year, he got benched. Now he comes out firing this season. Big wins over Kansas and Nebraska, in which in the Nebraska game he threw for 4 touchdowns. Nebraska had no answer for him down the stretch and was really, really fantastic in that game. And the potential that everybody saw in Luke Altmaier, he was a really highly recruited quarterback. He chose Ole Miss over schools like FSU and Auburn and a lot of other ones. He's at Illinois now, and he is hitting his real potential. I could also call this the Max Duggan Award. That's probably what I'm going to call it from now on. This is very Max Duggan-like from Luke Altmaier, coming back from being on the bench and doing it with skill and class. Unbelievable for the Illini. Number 3, the Dear God Tackle Someone Award goes to the state of North Carolina and the University of North Carolina and NC State. NC State has given up 50 points now twice to Tennessee and to Clemson. And Clemson might be good again, but still, that's not the kind of ball that Dave Doran is used to playing. As a matter of fact, his classically good teams in his career have been great on defense, especially at NC State, but they lost Peyton Wilson to the draft. He's now playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, a place perfect for that guy, by the way. North Carolina struggled on defense for the last few years, so much so that Mac Brown might have retired for about 10 minutes in the postgame the other night because he was so emotional after the 70-50 loss to James Madison. Erica Creech in the chat room today on the Triple Option said they need to teach it at K-12 defense in schools in North Carolina. They really do, because this was just not good collectively for that state and their 2 big schools over the weekend. Number 2, the Look at This Guy Award. That guy is Jake Retzlaff. Now, is Jake Retzlaff a guy that is definitely being tampered with like John Mateer? Absolutely not. But he is the starting quarterback on a team that has not lost a game yet this year in BYU, and the team that just blew out one of the presumptive favorites in their conference in the Big 12 in Kansas State. So look at this guy, Jake Retzlaff. Enjoy it while it's rolling, BYU fans, because this team has a little bit of moxie, and everybody we talked to in the BYU world this week was all like, I don't know, we just don't really see much coming from this team. Guess what? They're 4-0 right now and just drilled Kansas State, 38-9. You got to be kidding me that this team beat that team by that much, but that was an out-and-out blowout and one of the wildest stories from college football this weekend. And number 1, the They Still Play Football Award goes to Stanford. Syracuse was getting a lot of hype as a team that has been much improved, and they have been under Fran Brown. But Stanford so far has put in a couple of gritty performances this year and won in the last second. So congratulations to Stanford and all 400 of your football fans. You might be good again. Might want to pay attention there, Stanford. Get your nose out of a book for a second and live your damn life. This has been the Top 5. I'm Paul Catalina. We're wrapping it up right after this.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Top 5 brought to you by TexasBeefHouse.com. Again, congratulations to Chris Jenkins. Paul, he was 9-1.
Yeah,
College
9-1.
Pick'em.
Chris Jenkins.
So go to that link that you've used, and we need to put that up. Did we put that up for today?
I did not put it up today, but I will right now.
I do want to say, before we go, I will also not be joining the Pac-12. I just want to let everybody know that, and I'm remaining committed to 365 Sports.
Did you call Pete? Vanini? Feldman?
No, because I'm breaking the news myself.
Olsen?
Yeah. I'm sticking
Sources
with the
say,
365 Sports conference. But no, I mean, what a wild day and a lot to go home and read about and sort through when it comes to all the reactions over all the different decisions that were made today. And then just also taking a bit of a breath. Thank you again to the fine folks at Nebraska for the accommodations and all that came with that. I realized, man, I forget to mention that I went to Tallahassee because it was so long ago for Florida State, Florida, back when people were wearing Rick's Happens T-shirts on campus, and visited my cousin there. And I forget that when I'm chalking up like all the places that I've been to, and that's a pretty major one.
Yeah.
Going to
Did we win that day?
Yes, at Woke Campbell Stadium. They did get that win.
There we go.
But to add Nebraska to that was pretty cool, and didn't know if I'd ever go watch a game there. And it was everything and more. So if you ever get the chance, like that is college football at its best, just as far as atmospheres go.
Yep, and their fan base had their hearts broken yet again, which they've had. What was the record? They're 8-31 in one-score games like since 2016, which is just unfathomable. But at the same time, it's college football. It did not ruin the weekend. It wasn't great. I wish it had been nice to win, because I think if they would have won, I think we'd probably go to the football operations the next day, hang around a little bit, get a nice tour, but it was not meant to be. CBS Sports, by the way, quick note in basketball, because Baylor started their workouts today, and everyone else did, expanded their partnership with CBS Sports and the Big 12 multi-year agreement for more games to be broadcast from a conference, or from a conference that, of course, is fantastic when it comes to basketball, although last year in the postseason, not quite what we expected.
Yeah, it does mention televised 20 regular season men's basketball games per year. So, yeah, that's good. You're going to have some streaming options, Paramount Plus and all that as well. At some point, I do feel like we need to talk about the Big 12 Fast news that came out. We were gone on Friday and Thursday and Friday, and I know that got a lot of talk for a couple of days, so we can address that at some point as well and what that all means.
We'll do it sometime this week as the Big 12 continues to kind of put out more and more of their antlers, or however you want to say it, for more and more coverage, how they can do it based on who they are and what is available. For Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina, Emery Winters dialing up and editing 365 Sports tonight, 10:30 tonight on the local CW. Jack McKenzie, Levi Caraway, and also Garrett Ross, our sponsors. Those of you who watch, listen, whether it's 365 Sports on YouTube, whether it's Sikkim 365 app, or on Twitter at 365 Sports Y2. I'm David Smoak. Thanks for your time. Back again tomorrow, and have a great night.